There is a huge difference between a normal baby and Lin Ziken. A normal baby spends the day sleeping, feeding, and making their parents lose nights of sleep. Lin Ziken does that too. The difference is that between one bottle and another, he's busy completing missions, evolving his attributes, and building a six-pack before he even learns how to speak properly. After reincarnating into a world dominated by monsters, cyborgs, and genetically modified humans, he received a system capable of strengthening any part of his body through constant training. And like any good player who gets a broken ability, his first reaction was to abuse it to the fullest. Now follow the story of the baby who turned his crib into a gym, used a little girl as a workout weight, and became so strong that even his own parents started to believe they were raising a one-in-a-million genius. This is the journey of Lin Ziken. In Shenyang City, a mother takes care of her baby, Chenchen, while commenting that he is very lucky to be able to sleep right after filling his belly. She jokes that she envies him, since she has lost many hours of sleep because of him. Even so, as she looks at her son, she makes it clear that as long as Chenchen grows up healthy, all that effort is worth it. While Chenchen is being breastfed, an energy indicator begins to rise repeatedly, as if he is absorbing something every instant. At that moment, he realizes that he has just reincarnated, and that he is now only a newborn, with a brain still far from being fully developed. Suddenly, a screen appears before him showing his data. His name is Lin Ziken. He's only 33 days old, he is at normal biological level Tier 1, and he does not yet possess any biological attributes. Seeing this, Lin Ziken is surprised, realizing that besides reincarnating, he has also received an overpowered ability. At 3 months old, Lin Ziken already draws his parents' attention by kicking his feet in the crib. Zhang Wanxin, the protagonist's mother, affectionately comments that he hardly cries or throws tantrums, making everything much easier for her. Lin Yansheng, Lin Ziken's father, believes his son has a naturally blessed physique and imagines that in the future he may become a great and powerful gene modifier, or at least become a cyborg. Meanwhile, a new screen appears before Lin Ziken, showing that he has achieved the milestone of kicking his feet 10,000 times. As a reward, he receives the biological attribute Infinite Evolution, an ability that allows him to continuously strengthen any part of his body through constant training, although there is still the limitation of not surpassing a carbon-based life form. At 3 months old, Ziken completes his first system mission and can feel that he is gradually getting stronger thanks to the Infinite Evolution ability. Even so, he is still confused by the words he heard from his father and does not understand what the hell gene modifiers and cyborgs are. Trying to imagine what they might be, the protagonist wonders whether these people are something like Spider-Man, who gained powers through a mutation, or like Iron Man, who uses technology to fight. At 4 months old, Ziken can already sit up and crawl, but to avoid frightening his parents with his absurd abilities, he decides to train only at night while everyone is asleep. As he moves around the house, the system records his progress and increases his vitality, body coordination, and crawling proficiency. With this constant training, the protagonist evolves far too quickly for an ordinary baby. And at 5 months old, he already learns to walk, once again receiving increases in vitality, body coordination, and walking proficiency. At 6 months old, Ziken finally begins sitting up and crawling in front of his parents without needing to completely hide his development. While watching television with his parents, he sees a news report about terrifying beasts, explaining that gene modifiers and cyborgs are joining forces to fight them. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes for the first time that this Earth is different from the Earth he knew before reincarnating. In fact, the planet has undergone a mutation, and many frightening and unknown creatures have begun to appear, being called terrifying beasts. To face the terrifying beasts, humanity has developed 2 paths over the past few decades. The first is technological ascension, which uses machines and advanced technology to fight these creatures, giving rise to cyborgs. The second path is an advanced form of genetic modification, in which the genes of terrifying beasts are fused with human genes so that a person can obtain their abilities, basically fighting fire with fire. Understanding this, Ziken realizes that this world is much more dangerous than he imagined, but he also feels relieved to have his own system. With it, the protagonist believes he can grow stronger safely, continue evolving in secret, and increase his chances of surviving in this threat-filled world. Sometime later, the new neighbor appears at Wan Xin's house to introduce herself. Her name is Xu Meng, she lives right next door, and she has brought a small welcome gift. Then she introduces her husband, Shen Jianye, and their daughter, Shen Qinghan, saying that it is a pleasure to meet Ziken's family. Upon seeing that little girl, the protagonist understands that she will be his first friend in this world, but at that moment he still does not imagine that, in the future, their destinies will become deeply intertwined. At 7 months old, Zicken continues training in secret and his progress becomes even more absurd. Running around the house, he increases his vitality, body coordination, movement speed, and running proficiency. Then, when he begins jumping, he also strengthens his legs, improves his jumping height, and gains proficiency in that ability. In addition, he starts training his speech alone while playing, increasing his spirit, his ability to express himself, and his conversational skill. Thanks to infinite evolution, the protagonist can learn basic things like running, jumping, and speaking at only 7 months old. At 8 months old, Zicken can already do sit-ups and push-ups, continuing to strengthen his body thanks to infinite evolution. Each repetition increases his vitality, his sit-up proficiency, and the strength of his abdominal muscles. Even though he trains only when his parents are not nearby, the protagonist knows he will not be able to hide everything forever, and on that day, the inevitable finally happens. Wan Shen enters the room right when he is doing sit-ups in the crib and is shocked, unable to understand why Zichen is exercising like that. Seeing Zichen doing sit-ups, Wan Shen tries to convince herself that it was nothing more than a hallucination. Since she is an author of novels aimed at a male audience, she believes she has been so focused on work and so stressed that she ended up seeing things. To cover it up, the protagonist pretends to be asleep in the crib, and upon realizing that he managed to fool his mother, he concludes that he needs to be more careful next time. A few days later, during Zichen's bath, Wan Xin finally notices something impossible to ignore and urgently calls Yan Cheng. The protagonist's father appears in alarm, asking what happened, and Wan Xin reveals, completely shocked, that their son has abs despite being only 8 months old. Yan Cheng tries to understand the situation and concludes that since his son has a huge appetite and has now developed abs, perhaps their child is an extremely rare prodigy. Excited by his own idea, he tells Wan Xin that the boy may be a one-in-a-million genius, and that, with such a bright future ahead of him, he will certainly become a gene modifier or a cyborg. Meanwhile, Zicken realizes that his secret was almost discovered, but feels relieved to see that his father came up with an absurd explanation on his own. To him, having 2 novel authors as parents turned out to be an enormous stroke of luck. Still, when thinking about geniuses, the protagonist remembers that he is not the only special talent on this mutant Earth. While watching the news beside Wan Xin, Zichen sees a report about a talented boy from an ancestral martial arts family in the capital, who was born with impressive strength and at 2 years old can already lift 20 kilos with one hand. Upon hearing this, Wan Xin immediately defends her son, saying that Zichen is also incredible and that he definitely will not lose to those prodigies from elite families. The protagonist is touched by his mother's support and thinks she is very kind, but soon begins to wonder whether, when he turns 2, he will also be able to lift 20 kilos with ease. At 2 years old, Zicken finally manages to keep hiding his progress from his parents. With the help of infinite evolution, the protagonist is already able to lift 20 kilos with just one hand, proving that his training has truly paid off. However, while testing his strength in the storeroom, Wan Xin suddenly starts calling him, saying that Qinghan has come to play with him. Hearing his mother approaching, Zichen panics, realizing that he may be caught right in the middle of training. Zichen tries to act natural and leaves the storeroom as if nothing happened, but soon notices Qinghan waiting for him. The same age as the protagonist, she still speaks in a very childish and hard-to-understand way, offering him a toilet. Zichen thanks her and says he will take one. Meanwhile, he observes that Shen Qinghan still seems like a baby in the way she speaks, to the point that it is almost impossible to understand exactly what she means. Because of the great difference between their mental ages, Zichen does not usually play much with Qinghan. While she normally only eats and sleeps, he uses every free moment to train. Even so, the two get along well, and Qinghan ends up being the perfect weight to help the protagonist with his exercises. The problem is that this weight has one small flaw. In the middle of training, Zichen realizes that Qinghan has wet herself again and calls his mother, since she occasionally ends up having these leaks while lying on top of him. At 3 years old, Zichen can already lift 40 kilos with just one hand. Comparing his progress with the prodigy boy shown on the news, he realizes that he is already stronger than that boy, despite being younger. However, when he checks his data in the system, the protagonist notices that his biological level is still stuck at normal tier 1, even with all this physical advancement. This makes Zichen wonder just how strong someone at normal tier 2 would be, since that level probably already surpasses ordinary human limits. With so many doubts about biological levels and the limits of this world, Zichen leaves home for the first time. Seeing the city up close, he realizes that the outside world is even stranger than he imagined, with modified people and mechanical figures walking normally through the streets. The protagonist understands that they must be the gene modifiers and cyborgs he had already seen on the news. Since his parents do not allow him to use electronic devices, Zikin decides to look for answers at the library, which seems to be the best place to learn more about this mutant Earth and understand how far someone can evolve. At the library, Zikin runs straight to the section with the books that can truly answer his questions, leaving Wan Xin confused, since the children's section is on the other side. Qinghan tries to keep up with him and asks him to wait while the two mothers find his interest in such advanced books strange. Wan Xin asks why her son likes that kind of reading so much, and Shu Meng jokes that it can only be the genes of a genius. Afterward, Qinghan tries to distract him by offering cookies, but Zikin thanks her and says he needs to keep reading, letting them eat instead. Through his reading, the protagonist begins to better understand how this mutant world works. According to ancient stone tablets found in mysterious ruins, the world is divided into 6 power levels: normal, advanced, hero, epic, legend, and mythic. The reading shows Zikin that each power level is divided into 9 sub-levels, and that ordinary humans, like him at the moment, remain only at normal tier 1. Comparing this to the strongest creatures in this world, the protagonist realizes that normal people are nothing more than ants before them. With a clearer sense of the danger, he concludes that he needs to speed up his hidden training, because without enough strength, he will have no chance of surviving on this mutant Earth. At that moment, a new mission appears in the system, allowing Zikin to train not only his body, but also his mind. In the following days, Zikin takes no breaks and continues dividing his time between reading and training. At 4 years old, his life in kindergarten begins, and the class comes under the care of teacher Zhang Mei. Not long after entering kindergarten, the protagonist finally advances to normal tier 2, reaching a physical level that is absurd for his age. Now he can lift 80 kilos with one hand, jump 1 meter and 20 centimeters, and run 100 meters in 11 seconds. For an adult, these results would already be impressive. For a child, they are practically unbelievable. Even so, Zikin remembers that old saying about great power bringing great responsibility and understands that the stronger he becomes, the more careful he needs to be not to attract attention. In kindergarten, Qinghan ends up becoming a target for the other children who surround her and start teasing her, calling her a bedwetter. Seeing this, Zikin realizes that she is being bullied right in front of him. Even though he knows he needs to hide his strength, the protagonist cannot simply stand still while they do that to his friend. Without hesitation, he goes after the children who were mocking her, determined to make it very clear that anyone who bullied Qinghan would have to deal with him every day. After scaring the children who were bullying Qinghan, Zikin asks if they understood the message. The result is immediate. They all start crying, saying they are scared, that they want to go home, and that they do not want to go to school anymore. Seeing their reaction, the protagonist is surprised to have triggered a new mission with just that confrontation, even though he still has not completed the previous reading mission. With this, he realizes that he can carry out several missions at the same time, which is great news for him. 6 months later, Zikin finally completes the reading mission and receives the attribute Wisdom. From that moment on, his learning ability reaches the maximum limit a human being can achieve. Time passes quickly, and soon, Zikin is already 7 years old, graduating from kindergarten. During the vacation before starting elementary school, he continues training without rest. With his body growing stronger and stronger, the protagonist can already lift absurd weights, jump more than 2 meters, and finally run 100 meters in under 8 seconds. In addition, with the benefits of the heavenly root of survival, his stamina has increased so much that he can use all his free time to train and study without feeling tired. It is also during this stage that Zikin begins coming into contact with elementary school content, preparing not only his body but also his mind for the next step. At Shanghai City Elementary School, Zikin's new phase finally begins. Since he has already been studying middle school and even college-level content, elementary school competitions become easy for the protagonist. Even when he wins and receives awards, he sees it only as a bonus, since his real goal is to unlock the title of elementary school top dog as quickly as possible. After another victory, the teacher praises Zikin and says she is counting on him in the language arts competition the following week, encouraging him to keep up that pace. Meanwhile, at school, whenever he has free time, Zikin uses it to tutor Shen Qinghan. He tries to teach pronunciation patiently, making her repeat after him. But when Qinghan makes another mistake, the protagonist asks her to try once more. Even though Shen Qinghan is not very talented, she makes up for it by being obedient and hardworking. And after the first semester, her grades already become the second best in the class. The best, of course, are still Zikin's. To unlock the title of elementary school top dog, he does not limit himself to studying and also actively participates in all of the school's sports events, breaking every record along the way. Zikin continues participating in the school's sports events and breaking records, until he begins to think that his elementary school routine will always be like this, with studies, competitions, and a relatively peaceful life. However, that peace changes when a special transfer student arrives in the class. The teacher announces that a new classmate will be studying with them and introduces Bai Shue to everyone. The reason Zikin considers her special is simple. The instant she enters the classroom, the protagonist can feel a faint aura from her, something that clearly does not seem to belong to an ordinary human. Bai Shue walks through the classroom under the gaze of all the students, immediately drawing attention. Besides Zichen, Qinghan quietly comments that her hair is beautiful, comparing those white strands to snowflakes in winter. But the protagonist does not respond because he is far too focused on the strange aura he sensed from Bai Shui and is not in the mood to talk about her appearance. After Bai Shui enters the classroom, Zichen cannot treat it as the simple arrival of a transfer student. While she settles into the class, the protagonist remains suspicious, trying to understand why he senses an aura from her that does not seem human. To him, that strange presence may mean that Bai Shui is a gene modifier, or perhaps even a descendant of gene modifiers, and that possibility makes Zichen pay even closer attention to her. In the following days, Zichen continues observing Bai Shui and notices that she hardly interacts with anyone. As soon as classes begin, she simply rests her head on the desk and sleeps, and she almost never even leaves to go to the bathroom. At first, her arrival sparks the curiosity of all the students, who pay attention to every detail. But as time passes, since Bai Shui does not talk or do anything eye-catching, her classmates end up losing interest, and the classroom returns to its usual silence. Until 1 month later, the silence of the classroom is broken again. This time, Bai Shui begins secreting a white liquid from her body, and although no one can understand exactly what it is, the smell is horrible. The students quickly notice and start commenting, some asking what that liquid is, while others complain about the bad smell. The situation quickly turns into gossip, and some children begin making cruel comments about Bai Shui, implying that the liquid looks familiar and mocking her in increasingly unpleasant ways. The situation gets worse when one of the boys decides to approach Bai Shui, pretending to be kind. He says he will help her and starts pouring water on her, as if washing her a little would not hurt. But that only increases her humiliation in front of the class. Bai Shui tries to protect herself, gets soaked, and begins crying silently, clearly not knowing how to react while everyone continues treating the situation like a joke. While Bai Shui remains drenched and humiliated in front of the class, the other children burst out laughing, treating her suffering as a joke. Ziken is confused by what he sees, because he had always imagined that Bai Shui was dangerous because of her strange aura, but now he can only see her crying and being mistreated. Feeling sorry for their classmate, Qinghan approaches Ziken and asks him to help Bai Shui. The protagonist agrees, still not knowing exactly what Bai Shui is, but concludes that, at least in that moment, she does not seem like a threat. To him, Bai Shui is just a girl being bullied in front of everyone. Ziken walks straight up to Guanchun, the boy who was humiliating Bai Shui, and calls his name to make him stop. Then he grabs the boy by his clothes and, with a threatening expression, orders him to dry Bai Shui's desk. Guanchun loses all his courage instantly and, completely frightened, agrees without arguing, saying he will clean everything up right away. As Guanchun cleans Bai Shui's desk, he remembers that Zichen is famous at school for being excellent at both studying and fighting, to the point that even the 6th graders avoid messing with him. Afraid of making the situation worse, the boy concludes that it is better to simply obey. After making Guanchun clean everything up, Zichen stands beside Bai Shui and orders everyone who was bullying her to come over and apologize. Frightened by Zichen's pressure, the children immediately agree and approach Bai Shui to apologize. They admit they were wrong, promise never to bully her again, and ask for forgiveness one after another. With Qinghan by her side and Zichen making sure no one keeps mocking her, Bai Shui finally calms down a little. Still emotional, she thanks the two of them, saying she is very grateful that they helped her when everyone else was laughing at her. Qinghan reassures Bai Shui, saying it was nothing and that classmates should help one another. From that day on, Shen Qinghan begins getting closer to the white-haired girl and ends up bringing Zichen into that friendship as well. Whenever Qinghan has a tasty snack, the first thing she does is share it with Bai Shui, gradually making her stop being isolated and start walking together with them. Even after getting closer to Qinghan and Zichen, Bai Shui still feels insecure. Hesitantly, she asks if they are not disgusted by her because of the bad smell. Then she apologizes, explaining that it is not because she does not trust them. Ever since she was little, Bai Shui has always been hated and despised by the people around her, so having someone by her side for the first time makes her so happy that she can hardly believe it. To her, that kindness feels fake, as if it were only a dream. Qinghan replies that it is not a dream. Since she also knows what it is like to go through rejection and mockery, she says she would never be disgusted by Bai Shui. Then she makes it clear that if Bai Shui wants it too, they can be friends forever. Hearing those sincere words, Bai Shui is deeply touched, while Ziken watches the scene beside them, seeing Qinghan accept the white-haired girl without any prejudice. With Qinghan's words, Bai Shui finally understands that their friendship is real. Emotional, she hugs Qinghan and begins crying even harder, thanking her and Zichen again and again for staying by her side. After letting her emotions out, Bai Shui seems to remember something important and, still with tears in her eyes, stops crying when she realizes she needs to say something. After calming down, Bai Shui remembers that she also wants to repay their kindness. She says that Qinghan and Zichen have always shared their snacks with her and treated her like a friend, so she wants to give them something in return as well. Then Bai Shui hands them 2 fangs from terrifying beasts that she received from her own mother as a birthday present the previous year, hoping they will like the gift. Still emotional, she also reveals her wish to remain friends with the 2 of them forever. Zishin and Qinghan accept Bai Shui's gift and answer without hesitation that they will continue being friends. Those terrifying beast fangs come to symbolize the friendship between the 3 of them, and Qinghan enthusiastically reinforces that they will be friends forever and ever. Thus, after being rejected for so long, Bai Shui finally finds 2 people willing to truly stay by her side. Just when Qinghan believes that friendship will last forever, something unexpected happens. She is shocked to discover that Bai Shui has transferred schools and asks if it is true. Ziken confirms it, saying he saw her transfer papers being filled out with his own eyes, making it clear that Bai Shui really will no longer continue at that school. Ziken watches from a distance, as a man with mechanical arms appears to pick Bai Shui up and apologizes to the principal for the trouble caused. Bai Shui thanks him silently, and the principal replies that the situation has already been resolved, but makes it clear that her information is extremely confidential. Hearing this, the protagonist confirms that Bai Shui's identity truly was not simple. After that day, he never sees her at school again. Perhaps Bai Shui was only someone who passed briefly through their childhood, but she left an important mark on that stage of their lives. Compared to Bai Shui's departure, the events that came afterward were what truly surprised Zishin. At home, the protagonist helps Wan Xin by giving her a massage after a long day of writing and asks if the pressure is good. His mother says it is perfect and comments that she spent the entire day writing her novel, feeling relieved to have her son there to help her relax. Ziken realizes that the professional massage techniques he learned thanks to the heavenly root of wisdom turned out to be more useful than he had imagined. At that moment, a news report on television catches his attention, announcing another impressive achievement by the Prodigy of Quito. At only 10 years old, the boy has successfully fused with the gene of a terrifying beast and is now able to lift a 500-kilogram stone with just 1 hand. Seeing the news, Zichen immediately recognizes the Prodigy of Quito and realizes that he has already begun his genetic fusion with a terrifying beast. The protagonist understands that the boy is advancing down a completely different path from his own, using genetic modification to gain strength quickly. At that moment, Yansheng enters the room and comments that the Prodigy keeps appearing on television, questioning whether they are trying to turn him into some kind of advertising influencer. Yansheng explains that the Prodigy of Quito comes from a 1,000-year-old martial arts family and that they probably possess advanced genetic fusion technology. Wan Xin criticizes the situation, saying that this does not justify treating their own son like a test subject. The protagonist's father replies that, for martial arts families, the interests of the family always come before individuals, and that is why they have managed to become so powerful. Wan Xin simply shoots back by calling him a know-it-all. As he listens to the conversation, Ziken begins comparing the numbers. Before the genetic fusion, the Prodigy of Quito could only lift 100 kilos with 1 hand, but after the fusion, he could lift 500, a 5-fold increase. However, the protagonist is only 8 years old and can already lift 300 kilos with 1 hand without relying on any genetic fusion. Thinking about this, Ziken realizes that his own potential may be even greater than he imagined. After comparing his own progress with the Prodigy of Quito, Zichen begins to feel much more confident about the future. He believes that, if he continues evolving without depending on genetic fusion, his potential may surpass that of many geniuses in this world. But that confidence does not last long. Soon afterward, an urgent news report appears on television, announcing that a serious attack by terrifying beasts has taken place in a neighboring country. According to witnesses, the attack involved giant terrifying rats, destroying the city and spreading chaos through the streets. Seeing those images, the protagonist finally understands what it means to be overwhelmed by fear in the face of the true threats of this world. During the broadcast, the situation becomes even more terrifying when a woman appears trapped in front of one of the beasts, desperately begging for someone to save her. But before any help can arrive, the giant rat opens its mouth and lunges at her, attacking without mercy. Seeing that scene, Zicken understands that terrifying beasts are not just a distant threat from the news, but monsters capable of destroying ordinary lives in a matter of seconds. The news continues by revealing that the attack by the terrifying rats was not a simple natural disaster. According to the investigation, heretics were behind the incident, manipulating the beast from the shadows and spreading chaos in the neighboring country. Then, an official from the land of the rising sun appears before the press and asks for support from other countries to exterminate these heretics together, making it clear that the threat does not involve only monstrous creatures, but also people capable of using them to cause large-scale attacks. As he better understands the situation, Zicken realizes that the group behind the attacks is the infamous cult, an anti-human organization formed by traitors who, for their own benefit, began serving the terrifying beasts and carrying out attacks around the world. While his parents continue reacting to the news at home, the protagonist remains silent, reflecting on his own luck. At least he was born in a powerful and relatively stable country where he can still continue training in secret, becoming stronger without being thrown directly into the middle of that chaos. While Zicken is still reflecting on how lucky he is to live in a stable country, a violent boom echoes from outside and interrupts his thoughts. The sound is so powerful that it seems to break the sound barrier, frightening everyone in the room. The protagonist immediately looks toward the window and realizes that something abnormal is happening outside, unable to understand how a noise of that level could occur so close to home. Zicken runs to the window and opens the curtain after noticing strange movement outside. Seeing several high-ranking cyborgs flying through the sky at that hour of the night, he becomes worried and wonders why so many of them are moving out at that moment, hoping that nothing bad is happening. The next morning, in front of the school, Zicken gets ready to leave and urges them to hurry so they will not be late. At that moment, Chinghan appears and apologizes to the protagonist for keeping him waiting, but Zichen is surprised when he notices something strange. Zichen notices that Chinghan's beast fang is glowing and moves closer to warn her. Chinghan is startled when she looks at the object and confirms that it really has begun emitting light. Observing this, the protagonist starts to suspect that it may be the fang of a terrifying beast and concludes that the faint, inhuman aura he sensed coming from Chinghan must be coming precisely from that object. Since the fang's glow lasts only an instant, Zichen and Chinghan end up not paying much attention to what happened. Even so, when he connects it with the memory of the cyborgs flying through the sky the previous night, the protagonist gets a bad feeling, as if something is about to happen. As the two continue on their way, a red-haired woman watches them from a distance and comments that they are adorable children. The red-haired woman approaches the two and asks if they are siblings. Chinghan quickly explains that they are not, saying that she and Zicken are childhood friends and best friends. Hearing this, the woman comments enviously that she also wanted to have a childhood friend. The red-haired woman continues making conversation and asks if the two are going to school alone, wanting to know where their parents are. Chinghan becomes awkward and starts answering about their parents, but Zichen interrupts before she can say too much. He takes her hand, tells her to stop talking, and hurries her away, reminding her that they will be late if they keep standing there. When they arrive at school, Zichen tells Chinghan not to answer everything a stranger asks. She understands the warning and agrees. After class, the two walk down a more deserted street, and Chinghan feels uncomfortable with how silent the place is, telling the protagonist that it is too quiet there and even a little scary. Zichen explains to Chinghan that the area will be demolished next week, which is why the place is so quiet. As the two continue along the road, the red-haired woman appears again and comments that they finally left school. Then she speaks to someone named Sheng and says to forget it because she has already found the children. Zichen recognizes the red-haired woman and realizes that even though he chose a different route home specifically to avoid the path from that morning, she still managed to follow them. The protagonist is indignant when he notices this, while the woman tries to lure them in by saying she has lots of candy at home and asking if they want to come get some. At that moment, a man in purple clothes appears as her accomplice and complains that the woman talks too much. No longer pretending to be kind, she tells the man to just knock the two of them out and take them away quickly, making it clear that they had been after the children from the beginning. The man in purple clothes charges toward the two, while the red-haired woman reveals that she is in a hurry to sell them. Before he can reach the children, Zicken reacts quickly, launches himself forward, and lands a direct punch on him. The impact is so powerful that the man is sent flying, leaving the woman surprised when she realizes that the protagonist is no ordinary child. Seeing the man in purple clothes thrown away with a single blow, the red-haired woman is shocked and cannot believe that a child sent an adult flying like that. Without giving her time to react, Zicken immediately charges at her and hits her with another violent blow, knocking the woman down before she can do anything. Zicken picks up a piece of brick and realizes there are no cameras in that area. To avoid future problems, the protagonist concludes that the best option would be to eliminate the two criminals, even though he does not want to go that far because if they tell anyone what happened, his powers could be exposed and his plan to grow stronger in secret would be ruined. However, before he can act, the ground begins shaking violently. Chinghan is frightened behind him and Zikin is also confused, unable to understand why it suddenly seems like an earthquake is happening. Before Zichen can deal with the fallen criminals, a violent impact destroys the wall beside them. Right after that, a huge creature appears in the alley and the protagonist realizes in shock that it seems to be a giant, terrifying rat. Faced with the sudden appearance of the beast, the monster bites the woman, devouring half of her body. Zichen realizes that this is not good at all and runs toward Chinghan, who, terrified, asks him what that enormous thing is. Zichen holds Chinghan in his arms and explains that the creature is a monstrous giant rat. Without wasting time, the protagonist warns that they need to get to a safe place immediately and dashes down the street while carrying Chinghan. As Zikin tries to get away from there as quickly as possible, an armed figure appears at high speed, advancing through the same area. Zikin stops running and looks back, wondering if that woman is a cyborg since she arrived so quickly. The woman stops in front of the monster and begins charging a missile barrage. The blonde cyborg fires several missiles at the giant rat, which opens its mouth as the attack advances toward it. Explosions fill the alley and send debris flying everywhere. Even after the bombardment, the giant rat remains standing and withstands the attack. The blonde cyborg then charges at it, uses several transformations to weaken it, and enters close combat until she finally manages to finish the creature off. Later, Zikin reflects that the cyborg's level must not be very high, since she had to use several different forms and still spent 7 minutes fighting up close to defeat the terrifying rat. Zikin knows that giant terrifying rats are difficult creatures to face since adults can reach 8 meters in length and attain the biological level of normal tier 5. Thinking about this, the protagonist feels relieved that he managed to escape that monster the day before and decides to increase the intensity of his training. From then on, he begins training with even more weight and effort to strengthen his body. Even with the threat of the terrifying rats, life continues as usual, and soon Zichen and Chinghan are about to celebrate their 9th birthdays. After making their wishes, Zichen and Chinghan exchange birthday presents. Thanks to the heavenly root of wisdom, the protagonist learns in a single night how to carve a wooden hair clip to give Chinghan. She is delighted, thanks him for the gift, and says the hair clip is beautiful. In the blink of an eye, Zichen and Chinghan graduate from elementary school and begin high school. The system shows the achievement for dominating for 9 years while studying, rewarding him with the biological attribute survival of the fittest. Zikin has already unlocked the titles King of Kindergarten and Elementary School Top Dog, but High School Emperor is still locked. Just thinking about it makes the protagonist excited, since he is close to unlocking this new title and obtaining the attribute. During the vacation, to speed up the unlocking process and increase his strength, Zikin begins an extremely intense daily training routine, doing 1,000 weighted push-ups and increasing his vitality, arm strength, chest strength, and push-up proficiency. Near the end of the vacation, Zikin finally manages to raise his biological level to normal tier 3 after running 10 kilometers without stopping, receiving increases in vitality, body coordination, movement speed, and running proficiency. With this, the protagonist's physical attributes improve greatly. He can now lift 700 kilos with one hand, jump 4 meters vertically, and run 100 meters in 6 seconds. Even so, Zichen keeps wondering how strong the Prodigy of Quito must be. Coincidentally, on the night before classes resume, a report about the genius of Quito appears. In the report, the Prodigy of Quito is shown easily lifting 2 tons with one hand after fusing with the genes of giant ants. Zikin remembers that these genes increase strength by 4 to 8 times, and calculates that even with the smallest possible increase, his true strength would be around 400 kilos with one hand. With that, the protagonist concludes that he is already stronger than him, and starts imagining how much he could evolve if he also manages to undergo genetic fusion in the future. Finally, Zikin's life in high school begins. Because he had been the best student in the city throughout elementary school, several principals from the best schools tried to convince the protagonist to enroll with them. In the end, he accepts the invitation from Shanghai School, but on the condition that Chinghan stays in the same class as him. During enrollment, the principal and Zichen's teacher personally come to welcome him, saying they are counting on him to bring honor to the school. After a few quick introductions, the protagonist makes up an excuse and leaves. The real reason Zichen chose Shanghai School is that it has excellent sports centers. Because of this, before classes begin, the protagonist and Chinghan plan to play badminton together. Chinghan calls Zichen to start the match and immediately makes her move, using the fairy curve shot, but soon, An older student appears and interrupts the two, saying they must be newcomers and that this court is reserved for the seniors. The seniors say that Chinghan can even stay on the court, insinuating that some of them can play against her and teach her in a one-on-one match. Chinghan replies that even if they are seniors, they need to follow the rules, since she and Zikin arrived first. Seeing the students approaching her, the protagonist tells everyone to back away and reminds them that the court should belong to whoever arrived first. But the senior rejects that rule and declares that even if the Jade Emperor had arrived first, that court would be his today. Zikin picks up the shuttlecock and faces the seniors, ordering everyone to listen. Then the protagonist tosses the shuttlecock into the air and declares that, from that moment on, the only rules to be followed are his. Zichen strikes the shuttlecock with absurd force and it crosses the court at high speed, grazing past the leader of the seniors. The others are shocked by the speed of the attack, wondering whether he is even human or if he could be a gene modifier, but they quickly dismiss that because he is far too young. Even so, they realize that if Zikin had aimed just a little more to the side, their boss's head would have been destroyed. The seniors immediately bow and apologize, saying that they now understand the rules, and that Zichen and Qinghan can use the court for as long as they want. After that incident, perhaps because the rumors spread, no one tries to cause trouble for the two of them again. In the end, aside from the school being bigger and having better sports centers, the protagonist realizes that high school is practically the same as elementary school. Zikin had already finished all the high school content long ago, so during class he basically reads any book he finds interesting. After his nighttime training sessions, the protagonist uses the internet to learn new skills, and with the help of the heavenly root of wisdom, he becomes good at cooking, photography, driving, swimming, wilderness survival, and several other athletic abilities. To unlock the title of High School Emperor as quickly as possible, Zikin not only ranks first in every school subject but also represents the school in several national high school competitions. The protagonist wins gold, silver, and bronze medals in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and programming, avoiding taking first place in everything only so he will not attract too much attention. However, after 6 months, the title still has not been unlocked. Even so, because of all these impressive achievements, Zikin ends up gaining many female fans. Zichen has no interest in the fans he has gained, and besides continuing to teach Qinghan, he puts all his focus on the school sports festival. The protagonist believes that if he becomes the best at the festival, he may be able to unlock the title of High School Emperor. This time, he decides to participate in only 3 events: shot put, jumping, and running. In the shot put, Zichen already impresses everyone by throwing 20 meters and 12 centimeters. These 3 events represent strength, jumping ability, and speed. So, to Zikin, being the best in them means dominating all sports that require a strong physique. Even while holding back so as not to overdo it too much, the protagonist wins with ease and takes first place in the competitions. Afterward, he returns to the classroom beside Qinghan, already holding his medals. Soon after, Zichen feels a power spreading through his body. The system announces that by shocking the entire school with his academic and athletic achievements, the protagonist has finally unlocked the title of High School Emperor. With this, the titles King of Kindergarten, Elementary School Top Dog, and High School Emperor are complete, finishing the achievement of dominating for 9 years while studying. In addition, Zikin obtains the biological attribute Survival of the Fittest and celebrates finally unlocking the title. Upon receiving the Survival of the Fittest attribute, Zikin understands that, as a predator, his life essence stands above that of other creatures, and he can devour their essence to evolve. The protagonist begins wondering what exactly this life essence is, but Qinghan calls for him to wait for her. Zichen then turns his attention back to her and asks if he can hold her beast fang for a moment. Qinghan hands the beast fang to Zichen, and the moment the protagonist touches the object, the system informs him that he has devoured a small amount of the life essence of the abyssal giant butterfly. The assimilation is still only at 1%, but once it reaches 100%, Zichen will be able to evolve and gain some traits or abilities from the beast. Realizing this, he finds the item strange and wonders if that really is the fang of a butterfly. Now that he knows the name of the exotic beast, Zichen tries to search online for information about the abyssal giant butterfly. However, the search does not find any results, leaving the protagonist without any clues. Because of this, he realizes that he will have to investigate on his own to learn more about this beast. Zichen finds the second fang and feels relieved that Bai Shui gave them both. After absorbing a little more of the abyssal giant butterfly's life essence, the assimilation rises only to 2%. With this, the protagonist concludes that there is not much life essence in the beast bone, and that he needs to find another way to assimilate it. The next day, after school, Ziken begins riding his bicycle back and forth with Chinghan every day to help with his own training. In addition, the protagonist thinks that if they encounter another giant rat along the way, he will be able to get Chinghan to a safe place much faster. As Zichen returns from school with Chinghan, a teacher calls his name and introduces himself as Guo, the person in charge of the school's martial arts team. He explains that the protagonist's performance at the sports festival was the best in the entire history of the institution, and because of that, he wants to invite him to join the martial arts team. Teacher Guo insists that Ziken's athletic talent is even greater than his academic abilities and asks him to accept the invitation. Before the protagonist can refuse, Guo suggests that he visit the martial arts team before deciding. Ziken realizes that the teacher speaks so quickly that he does not even get a chance to say no, while Guo tells him that the team is in room C of the gymnasium and that he will be waiting for him the next day. At nightfall, Ziken tries to test the predator ability on ordinary creatures and kills a cockroach and a mosquito, but nothing happens. With this, the protagonist concludes that these insects do not have enough life essence to activate the ability, and that probably only terrifying beasts can be devoured. To confirm his theory, Zichen grabs his phone, goes out on his bicycle with Chinghan, and decides to head to a supermarket that sells beast meat, wanting to find out whether only creatures of that kind have enough life essence to activate the predator ability. Zichen and Chinghan quickly arrive at the supermarket in the lower district. Inside, the protagonist finds various kinds of beast meat, but realizes that they are all sealed, so he will not be able to touch them to test his theory. At that moment, a vendor announces fresh beast meat, catching Zichen's attention. Zichen notices a butcher selling unpackaged beast meat and sees this as a chance to test his theory. He asks Chinghan to wait a moment while he goes to look at the meat, leaving her confused. But the protagonist does not explain anything for now, since he wants to confirm it as quickly as possible. Ziken approaches the beast meat excitedly and realizes that the answer was right in front of him. When he touches the meat, the protagonist confirms that his theory was correct. Beast meat really does possess a strong life essence. While he celebrates the discovery, Chinghan does not understand and asks if he is okay, wondering why Zichen is so excited just from touching meat. Chinghan asks Zichen whether beast meat is different from ordinary meat. The protagonist covers it up, saying not much, only that it seems a little fresher, and even asks if she wants to touch it too. Chinghan refuses, saying that she trusts him. Since they are already there, Zichen decides to buy some meat to test at home, leaving Chinghan even more confused. Chinghan is shocked by the idea of buying beast meat, but this does not surprise Zichen since that kind of meat is not cheap. Even the cheapest option, ghost squid, costs nearly 1,000 yuan per kilo. Even so, the protagonist decides to take that meat home to test his theory. Chinghan is worried about the price of the beast meat and asks whether Zichen should consult his mother before buying it. The protagonist reassures Chinghan, pats her on the head, and says that his mother told him to bring plenty of meat home. Zichen's mother tells him that since they are going to buy beast meat, they should buy enough for Chinghan's family to eat as well, and transfers the money to him. The protagonist understands that she intends to prepare a beast meat banquet for both families, but he still has one concern. If he absorbs the life energy from the meat, it might end up spoiling. Since this is still only a theory, Zichen decides to test it with the meat they're taking home. At the checkout, the purchase of 3 ghost squids comes to 2,994 yuan. After paying for the 3 ghost squids, the saleswoman thanks them for the purchase and says goodbye. Leaving the market, Zichen complains about the absurd price of beast meat and wonders when they will be able to buy it again. Since it is already past 9 at night and the city has been quite chaotic lately, the protagonist does not wander around with Chinghan and decides to go straight home. On the way home, Zichen cannot wait until they arrive and decides to test his theory right there. He takes the ghost squid meat from the bicycle basket, touches it, and declares that it is the moment of truth. At that same instant, energy begins flowing out of the meat, indicating that his ability is reacting. Upon touching the meat, Zichen activates the predator ability, and the system confirms that he has devoured a small amount of the ghost squid's essence. Then the protagonist has a vision of the creature and discovers that his assimilation with it has reached only 0.1%. After absorbing only 1 or 2 tails of the ghost squid meat, Zichen realizes that it increased the assimilation by only 0.1%. Doing the math, the protagonist concludes that he would need to devour at least 1,000 tails to complete the assimilation, which would cost around 100,000 yuan, since 500 grams cost 998 yuan. Even so, he considers it worth it, because the ghost squid's ability allows it to dissolve in water, and obtaining that power would be extremely valuable. Besides, this is the cheapest beast meat he can buy, so Zichen decides that he needs to find a way to earn money, since the amount is far too large to ask his parents for. Then, he remembers that he also bought the meat to test whether absorbing the life essence would make it spoil. And since some time has already passed since the test, he decides to check whether there has been any result. Zikin checks the ghost squid meat and confirms that absorbing the life essence does not spoil the meat, which makes him even more excited. As he continues absorbing the energy, his assimilation with the ghost squid reaches 3%, but the protagonist becomes so focused on it that he forgets to pay attention to the road. Jinghan warns him in time to avoid a collision, and Zikin apologizes, realizing that the bike lane is strangely crowded. Soon after, Qinghan points ahead and the protagonist sees teacher Zhang Mei being held hostage by a man who threatens to kill her if anyone approaches. The police try to negotiate with the criminal, asking him to calm down and lower the weapon. One of the officers warns them not to shoot recklessly since the man is using Zhang Mei as a shield and moving around constantly, so any mistake could hit the hostage. Another suggests using a sleeping drug, but the captain refuses, saying that would be too obvious and could make the criminal act extremely before the effect takes hold. While they hesitate, Zikin picks up a stone from the ground and throws it forcefully toward the kidnapper. The stone thrown by Zikin hits the criminal and creates an opening for the police to act. The captain immediately orders them to move in, the officers take the man down, and they manage to save Zhang Mei. Qinghan realizes that the protagonist was the one who threw the stone, but Zichen tells her to stay quiet and tries to leave, saying he will explain everything later. However, an officer sees the two leaving and tells them to stop, asking whether Zikin was the one who threw that stone. Zikin tries to deny that he was the one who threw the stone, but the captain finds it strange that someone would not want to take credit for a good deed, and comments that he could receive a reward for his courage. Hearing this, the protagonist immediately changes his mind and admits that it was him, thinking that he did not want to expose himself, but money was more important at that moment. Completely lost, Qinghan asks the protagonist why he came back and tells him to wait for her. The captain then calls Zichen over to make a report and says he will help him receive the reward as the brave one. After that, Zichen and Qinghan notify their families that they are going to the police station to give statements, lock the bicycle in the square, and get into the police car to secure the first money earned through his courage. Zichen thought nothing would go wrong after getting into the police car, but the situation suddenly changes. The criminal begins to transform, and the police realize that he is a heretic, showing signs of mutation and turning into a giant rat. The creature breaks free from the officer's control and attacks, so the captain orders all squads to open fire on the giant rat while making sure to protect the civilians. The police try to contain the giant rat with gunfire, but soon realize they cannot handle the situation and call for reinforcements, reporting that the heretic has fused with giant rat genes. Seeing the danger increase, Zichen curses the situation and apologizes to Qinghan and Zhang Mei before pulling the two of them away to escape. As he runs, the protagonist realizes that the creature is not following them, but he still insists that they need to hurry. At that moment, something passes through the sky at high speed, and Zikin is startled as he tries to understand what just happened. Zikin realizes that it was a cyborg arriving at high speed. The cyborg appears before the giant rat, landing a direct blow to the monster's face. She begins charging a laser cannon and fires at the creature. The attack cuts through the area, striking the rat and releasing a massive blast of energy that instantly pulverizes the monster. Zikin is impressed by the power of the cyborg's attack and feels relieved that his bicycle was not hit since that would have cost him money. Zhang Mei and Qinghan are also relieved to be safe, but the protagonist soon realizes that the beast meat in the basket has spoiled. With this, he concludes that absorbing life essence really does spoil the meat, but the effect takes a while to appear. Not wanting to reveal the truth, Zikin decides to make up an excuse and blames the heretic, saying that the cyborg's attack was so powerful that it ended up burning the meat. Qinghan simply says that it is fine, since the important thing is that everyone is safe. After that, they intended to walk home, but at the captain's request, they end up going to the police station in a patrol car to give their statements. Inside the patrol car, Zikin notices that the heretic's body, even after being incinerated by the laser cannon, still left behind a pile of ashes, and the smell is far too strong. Then he remembers that there was still a little life essence in the fang of the abyssal giant butterfly, and begins to wonder whether that body would also have some essence left. Because of this, the protagonist becomes curious to know if he could absorb the giant rat gene from it. Zikin is curious to know how much his assimilation with the giant rat gene would increase by touching the freshly charred body of the heretic. Since there is only one way to find out, the protagonist approaches and touches the ashes. The system confirms that he has devoured part of the giant rat's life essence, raising the assimilation to 5%. With this, Zikin concludes that the more recent the death, the greater the amount of life energy that can be absorbed. An officer notices his movement and tells him to stay still, but Zikin covers it up, saying that he had been sitting for too long and needed to stretch. Zikin thinks that fooling Ah Bing is easy, but the captain is different. At the police station, the captain says he has already arranged everything for him to receive the award for his courage, but he still wants to know the truth. From that distance and in such poor lighting, how did a high school student manage to hit the heretic's hand so accurately with a stone? The protagonist tries to cover it up, saying that maybe it is because he always trains throwing with his right hand. Before the conversation can go any further, Ching-hun says that Zikin's mother has come to pick them up. Zikin finds her presence strange, saying they could have gone home by themselves, but his mother runs over to him, asking if he is okay, frightened by the danger he went through. The protagonist tries to calm her down, saying that he is fine, and even received a reward for his courage. Zikin's mother, still shaken by the danger he faced, asks that if something like this happens again, he goes straight to a safe place, because all she wants is to see him grow up well and safely. The protagonist promises that he will always prioritize his own protection. Meanwhile, at the police station, the officers comment that the rat god cult is becoming more and more active and is now infiltrating even universities, mainly targeting students who cannot legally become gene modifiers. They explain that the heretic who was shot was a liberal arts student from Guangwan University and had been brainwashed by the cult. One of the officers says they need to wipe out those members, but soon concludes that this would only be temporary, since the real problem is the self-proclaimed Rat King. Hearing that name, Zikin becomes intrigued and later discovers that there is a lot of information about the rat god cult on the internet. Zikin researches the rat god cult and discovers that their main base is in Shanghai, with most of their members being criminals and their activities increasing that year. He also finds information saying that the Rat King is trying to evolve into a higher life form, forcing his followers to gather tons of evolution materials. Seeing this, the protagonist begins to wonder if the Rat King has already developed intelligence. Soon after, Zikin sees a giant rat and finds the creature's size strange, wondering whether it could be connected to the Rat King. But he tries to convince himself that it is probably nothing serious, since in the southern district it is normal for there to be rats the size of cats. Zikin notices that Ching-hun has become too quiet and begins to suspect that she has lost control again because of fear, just like when she was a child. This makes the protagonist remember that he has always found her problem strange, as if it might be connected to some unknown potential. Later, when they arrive home, Zikin's mother is shocked to learn that he lost the beast meat. He explains that it was an emergency, that there was no way to worry about the meat at that moment, and says that he probably dropped everything during the chaos. Zikin's mother decides to forget about the meat, saying the important thing is that he is safe. The protagonist feels relieved that he managed to fool her, but then sees his father wanting to go out and tries to stop him, warning that it is dangerous. His father replies that everything is fine, since he is the destined carrier and is tough to take down. Zikin then says that, even so, the meat is already spoiled, making his father ask how he knows that. With no way to explain, the protagonist simply says he guessed. Meanwhile, at the police station, the captain is still thinking about how a student managed to throw a stone with such force. Suddenly, a huge rat appears before him, leaving the captain startled as he wonders where that creature came from. The rat tries to attack the captain, but he draws his gun and begins firing at the enormous rat. After everything that happened, Zikin realizes that he is still far too weak compared to the Rat Man and the cyborg from the day before. Because of this, the protagonist decides that he needs to quickly find a way to earn money and complete his assimilation with the ghost squid. At first, he thinks about relying on school prizes, but that would take too long. Then he considers becoming a study influencer, doing live streams to teach and selling materials. But he discards the idea because it would attract too much attention. Then Zikin realizes that he had been thinking in the wrong direction. In a world full of gene modifiers and cyborgs, martial skills attract more attention than academic skills, and the prize money from martial arts competitions is much higher than that of other subjects. Zikin realizes that the best way to earn money is through martial arts competitions and decides to take action. He goes to the school gymnasium, finds teacher Guo, and greets him. The teacher asks whether he came to join the team or just learn more about the martial arts club. Without beating around the bush, the protagonist asks whether, if he joins the team, he will be able to participate in the city's martial arts competitions, and whether the cash prizes are large. Teacher Guo confirms that Zikin will be able to participate in the competitions and explains that the prizes are not low, reaching tens of thousands. Hearing this, the protagonist immediately makes up his mind and officially joins the martial arts team. Guo welcomes him excitedly, gathers the team members, and introduces Zikin as the great champion of the school festival. Then the teammates introduce themselves: Zhang Kai, Huang Tianxing, Li Shutong, and Han Yisuo. Zikin also introduces himself and asks them to take care of him from then on. Since he has never trained in martial arts before, teacher Guo begins by teaching him the basics, demonstrating simple punching and kicking techniques. explaining that they look simple but are difficult to master. He comments that even little Lee, the fastest learner on the team, took a week to learn them. When it is Zikin's turn to try, the protagonist observes the technique and, thanks to the system, receives martial enlightenment sent by the heavens. Zikin begins repeating the punching and kicking techniques that teacher Guo just demonstrated, and the system records increases in vitality, hand and leg, strength and dexterity, as well as proficiency in punches and kicks. The protagonist performs the movements with such precision that everyone is left in shock. Teacher Guo cannot believe what he is seeing, while the team members wonder how he managed to learn everything after watching only once, with Guo suspecting that Zichen may be a one-in-a-million martial arts prodigy. After surprising teacher Guo and the team members with how easily he learns martial arts, Zichen returns home later. At night, his mother calls him to get the bowls and tells him that dinner is ready. The protagonist asks what they are having, and she reveals that she prepared the very ghost squid he wanted so much. Smelling the food, Zikin realizes that the dish turned out incredible. Zikin keeps only smelling it and is impressed. His mother tells him to stop just smelling it and eat while it is hot, asking what he thinks. The protagonist praises the food, saying that she is the best cook in the world, and his mother tells him he can eat as much as he wants, since she bought more than a kilo of that meat. While he eats, the system confirms that he has devoured a little of the ghost squid's life essence, increasing the assimilation to 3.01%. With this, Zikin realizes that eating the meat directly also works, and regrets not discovering it sooner. Soon after, a news report appears on television, announcing that a genius girl has shocked the nation by fusing with an energy reactor at the age of 14, becoming the youngest cyborg in history. The news continues explaining that when the girl's reactor is activated, she can lift a 2-ton SUV with one hand, run 100 meters in only 3 seconds, and jump 8 meters vertically. Seeing this, Zikin begins comparing the cyborg to the Prodigy of Quito, wondering who would be stronger between cyborgs and gene modifiers. Then another report announces the tragic death of Captain He Chung-shan, who was devoured by a giant rat that infiltrated the police station around 11 at night. The protagonist suspects that it may have been one of the giant rats from the previous night and, feeling the danger getting closer and closer, decides to intensify his training even more. After a period of heavy training, Zikin manages to run 100 meters in 4.61 seconds. He also manages to increase his vertical jump to 5.5 meters as well as lift 1 ton with only one hand. The protagonist also continues practicing martial arts, hoping to improve quickly so he can participate in tournaments. The next morning, he goes to the gymnasium to study and train, while Chinghan accompanies him. When he arrives there, a classmate approaches and asks whether Zikin has already eaten breakfast. She offers him fresh milk, but the protagonist thanks her for her kindness and refuses, saying it is not necessary. A student who lost to Zikin at the festival becomes irritated when he sees this, thinking that Zikin not only stole his prize, but also refused a gift from the girl he admires. The student confronts Zikin, saying that he could at least accept the milk and give it to someone else, but the protagonist replies that this would be even worse. Irritated, the boy insists that he drink it so as not to be disrespectful, but Zikin says he is allergic to milk. The student does not believe him and challenges the protagonist to a duel, promising to stop bothering him if he loses, but demanding that Zikin drink all the milk if he wins. At that moment, the system activates a new achievement, saying that Zichen needs to defeat 1,000 opponents in formal competitions, using the most primitive form of combat known to humans. The reward will be the biological attribute survival of the fittest, and the counter begins at 0 out of 1,000 defeated opponents. Receiving a new mission after so long, Zikin becomes excited, since he now has an extra reason to fight in formal competitions. Without hesitation, the protagonist accepts the challenge and says he will duel. News of the duel spreads quickly through the school, and several students begin commenting that Lin Zikin is going to fight a senior in the gymnasium. Because of this, many people run over to watch, forming a circle around the two of them. Some girls cheer for the protagonist, telling him to teach the senior a lesson, while the pink-haired girl wishes him good luck and says she will take great photos of him. The senior becomes irritated when he hears everyone cheering against him and thinks that he needs to defeat Zichen before the protagonist's talent grows even further. To him, this is the moment to show himself, before he loses the chance to surpass that promising junior. Meanwhile, Zichen only wants to resolve the situation quickly, saying that he still needs to go home for dinner. The senior accepts the duel and replies that he will make sure he gets there in time. Teacher Guo starts the duel by reminding them that safety comes first and the fight comes second. Before they begin, the senior asks them to wait and says that since Zichen has trained for only 1 month while he has already trained for nearly 2 years, he will let the protagonist make the first 3 moves to be fair. Zicken advances before the senior can understand what is happening and throws the first punch, knocking the senior to the ground before he even has a chance to react. Teacher Guo is shocked to see that the senior was knocked down with a single punch, while the team members cannot believe that the fight ended so quickly. Qinghan celebrates Zichen's victory, and the girls also praise the protagonist's performance. Then the system confirms that he has defeated one opponent in a formal competition, raising the achievement counter to 1 out of 1,000. Zicken realizes that he still needs to defeat another 999 opponents to complete the mission, so he takes advantage of the celebratory mood and asks the seniors why they do not duel him as well. Hearing Zicken's invitation to keep dueling, the team members panic and start making up excuses to run away, saying they have tutoring classes, that they need to go home early for dinner, that they need to go to the bathroom, or even that they have to take relatives to other appointments. While everyone backs away, Zhang Kai refuses to accept defeat and complains that he was attacked by surprise, saying he would win if they fought again. Teacher Guo tells him to accept defeat like a man and also thinks that Zichen's punch was so powerful that it really caught everyone by surprise, since he had never seen anything like it. Professor Guo calls Xiao Lisi to be next, frightening the senior. Even so, he prepares to fight and apologizes in advance, while hoping Zichen will not hit his face too. 10 minutes later, the protagonist confirms that he was careful not to overdo it and only exchanged a few blows with his senior brothers. But even so, they all end up lying on the floor. Zichen realizes that, except for Zhang Kai, none of the other seniors counted toward the achievement's progress, since the system still shows only one opponent defeated out of 1,000. With this, the protagonist concludes that simply dueling is not enough, and that he needs to knock out his opponents for the mission to advance. Meanwhile, Professor Guo becomes excited, calls Zichen a genius, and says that even though he joined the team only a month ago, he has already become the star of the squad. Guo believes that in that year's regional martial arts tournament, the school will finally crush the others and take first place. Hearing this, Zichen realizes that the tournament is the perfect chance to take down several opponents at once. Zichen concludes that if he defeats others in a formal competition, it should count toward the achievement's progress. At that moment, Zhang Kai calls out to him and finally accepts his defeat, saying he will not complain even if Zichen spits in his face. While Zhang Kai is still trying to finish speaking, everyone is disgusted by what he said and leaves. The protagonist understands that in this world, high school is not limited to ordinary studies, since martial arts classes are one of the main choices for students. To keep up with this path, Qinghan begins training together with Zichen. During their run, she tries to catch up to him, and he encourages her to keep going, saying she is almost reaching him. After running 3,000 meters, the two practice martial arts techniques for another hour to improve their hand-to-hand combat. They also do sit-ups and push-ups to improve their physical strength and endurance. After each session, the protagonist helps Qinghan relieve her muscle tension with a massage. In addition, he knows he cannot stop training if he wants to be prepared for the upcoming martial arts tournament. Because of this, Zichen is giving it his all to develop the survival attribute as quickly as possible. 1 month later, the day of the tournament finally arrives, and Zichen heads to the venue carrying his bag, ready to put everything he has trained during that period into practice. At the city gymnasium, Coach Guo sees that their school had no luck in the draw since they ended up facing the strongest team right away, Shanghai #1 school. Lizzie comments that this school has a true monster that year, someone capable of running 100 meters in only 4 seconds, and he believes they will be completely destroyed. Even after hearing this, Zichen offers to compete first. The coach accepts and places the protagonist as the team's first representative. Qinghan and Professor Guo encourage Zichen before the fight, saying they are counting on him and that he needs to believe in himself. The protagonist enters the arena and soon comes face to face with a huge competitor from Shanghai #1 school. The opponent recognizes Zichen as the Shanghai freshman who appeared on the participant list and comments that, for a first-year student, making it to the 8-school league arena is already impressive, admitting that he really does have talent. The opponent continues provoking Zichen, saying that this is no place for a first year like him, especially one who is less than 1.70 meters tall. Then, the competitor says he will soon show the protagonist the difference between their size and strength. With the two positioned in the arena, the referee starts the fight. As soon as the fight begins, the opponent charges forward with force, trying to crush Zichen with the first attack, but the protagonist moves far too quickly, dodges the blow, and catches the opponent off guard. Before the man can react, Zichen uses the opening and takes him down in one move, winning the fight in just a few seconds. The result leaves everyone speechless, and the commentator announces that Lin Zichen is the winner. Qinghan celebrates the victory and says Zichen was incredible, while the other students also begin shouting that the protagonist is amazing. One of them believes the secret must be Zichen's compact muscles, since he managed to win like that. On the other side, the coach of Shanghai #1 reprimands the defeated competitor, saying he has told him many times about the importance of movement and that he should never attack recklessly inside the arena. With the victory, the system notifies Zichen that he has defeated another opponent and increased his progress, reaching 2 defeated opponents out of 1,000. Seeing this, the protagonist confirms that, as expected, defeating competitors in the tournament also increases the mission's progress. After the first defeat, the coach of Shanghai #1 chooses Chen Feng as the next competitor and demands that he defeat Zichen as quickly as possible. Chen Feng accepts the order and enters the arena prepared to fight. As soon as the two take their positions, the referee announces the start of the next match. As soon as the fight begins, Chen Feng charges at Zichen, but the protagonist reacts quickly and strikes the opponent before he can do anything. The blow is strong enough to send Chen Feng flying, causing him to hit the ground and lose consciousness. The situation quickly becomes serious, and someone orders the competitor to be taken to the hospital, suspecting that he may have hit his head. Zichen's winning streak begins to irritate the spectators, who do not understand how he can be winning so easily. Some say the protagonist is just getting lucky, since one of his previous opponents ended up losing by stepping out of the arena on his own, while others even suspect a betting scheme and demand refunds. But the coach of Shanghai #1 realizes that this is not luck and concludes that this freshman is truly strong. Even though he is worried, he calls Gao Fei for the next match and tells the student to focus on defense, not to attack recklessly because he cannot lose. Gao Fei accepts the order confidently and assures the coach that he will win. Gao Fei enters the arena believing that Zichen is not truly strong, only fast and good at using his head during a fight. To him, since he can run 100 meters in under 4 seconds and has more combat experience, all he needs to do is take the match seriously in order not to lose. Meanwhile, the spectators comment that Gao Fei is absurd for a high school student, especially because he is the son of a gene modifier, which puts his physical abilities far above those of normal people. Some believe the protagonist has no chance against him, but others acknowledge that Zichen is still only a first-year student, and if he continues evolving, he could turn his school into one of the best. With both of them ready, the referee announces the start of the fight. As soon as the fight begins, Gao Fei ignores the coach's instructions and charges at Zichen with everything he has. He uses the crushing stone fist, trying to win through a direct attack, but the protagonist reacts quickly and keeps up with the blows head-on, dodging all of them with ease. Seeing this, the coach becomes desperate and shouts at Gao Fei, reminding him that he had told him to focus on defense and asking why he is attacking anyway. Gao Fei completely ignores the coach's order and thinks that, because he is a genius, he does not need to worry about defense. While he attacks nonstop, Zichen realizes that the fist technique is interesting and decides to observe it in order to learn it before winning the fight. Even with several blows coming his way, the protagonist dodges all of them with ease, making Gao Fei more and more irritated because he cannot land a hit. Unable to understand how that is possible, Gao Fei questions how Zichen can dodge all of his attacks. Then the protagonist asks whether he has any other moves and tells him to use them too, making Gao Fei interpret it as a direct provocation. He attacks with even more force, trying to land at least one punch on Zichen. Zichen realizes that Gao Fei keeps using the same technique and decides to end the fight quickly. Then the protagonist counterattacks and defeats the opponent, leaving the spectators speechless for a few moments. Soon after, everyone begins cheering, calling Zichen incredible, and recognizing that he has already achieved a 3-win streak. His team also becomes excited by the feeling of winning without having to do anything, while Zichen remains in the arena. Zichen thinks that the next opponents end up being weaker than the first 3. Quickly, Zichen defeats all 5 members of Shanghai #1 school. Over the next 2 days, the protagonist continues defeating the other 2 schools on his own and leads his team to victory in the 8-school championship. Even after winning the championship, the system shows that Zichen has still defeated only 16 of the 1,000 required opponents. The protagonist realizes that he still lacks another 984 opponents, so completing this mission will probably take years. Even so, although he will not complete the mission anytime soon, he did not expect to receive such a good reward. Professor Guo decides to give him most of the tournament prize, a total of 20,000 in cash. Adding the tournament prize to the money he earned in academic competitions, Zichen ends up with around 30,000 yuan and celebrates finally having a good amount of money in hand. But that joy does not last long because the protagonist quickly spends all that money. At home, Zichen's mother asks him to eat slowly since there is still food left. After devouring 15 kilos of ghost squid meat in one sitting, the protagonist's assimilation progress rises to 33%. With this, during his second year of high school, Zichen manages to advance from normal tier 3 to normal tier 4. Now he can also lift 1,090 kilos with one hand, jump 5 meters and 65 centimeters vertically, and run 100 meters in 4.49 seconds. Time passes quickly and Ziken graduates from high school alongside Shen Qinghan. Soon after, the university entrance exam results come out, and the protagonist ranks first in the district in both academics and martial arts. Qinghan also achieves an excellent academic score, but her martial arts score is not high enough to enter the university's elite class. Shaken, she comments that she worked so hard and asks Ziken if this means she will not be able to attend the same university as him. Zichen wipes away Qinghan's tears and replies that he also does not know whether she will be able to enter the same university. However, he remembers that the university director said she would come to his house and asks if Qinghan wants to meet her. Qinghan believes the director will only appear to convince Zichen to join the elite martial arts class and says that has nothing to do with her, so she sees no reason to meet her. But the protagonist reassures her and reveals that his only condition for studying at that university is that Qinghan studies there with him as well. The director goes to Zichen's house and talks with him and his family for several hours. In the end, it becomes clear that she was only expressing how much she wanted the protagonist to continue studying at the same university. After saying everything she needed to say, the director says goodbye to Zichen, stating that they have talked for quite a long time and that she has already explained everything she wanted to explain. Before leaving, the director says that if Zichen agrees to continue studying at her university, he can directly ask for anything he wants. Then, the protagonist thanks her and makes his only request, that Shen Qinghan also be allowed to continue studying in the same class as him. The director approaches Qinghan and takes a good look at her. Then, she accepts Zichen's request and tells them that when classes resume, the two of them can go together to enroll at the university. Zichen and Qinghan thank the director for the opportunity. After choosing his university, the protagonist participates in his final high school tournament and, as expected, easily defeats his opponents, leading his school to victory once again. After receiving the prize money, Zichen decides to fulfill a wish he has had for quite some time, completing his assimilation with the ghost squid. Since his progress is already at 80%, only 20% remains before reaching the total, and the tournament money will be enough to buy the necessary meat. Not knowing what might happen when the assimilation reaches 100%, the protagonist goes to a mountainous area outside Shanghai City. There, Zichen decides that the time has come to unlock this assimilation and devours a large amount of the ghost squid's life essence. After devouring the ghost squid's life essence, Zichen's assimilation finally reaches 100%. With this, the system informs him that he has completed the assimilation and gained the biological attribute aquatic form, which greatly increases his affinity with water and allows him to move freely within it. However, after seeing the explanation, the protagonist thinks this ability seems practically useless. To test the new attribute, Zichen enters a nearby lake and notices that his skin does not wrinkle even after spending a long time underwater. And he also feels that the water resistance has become much lower. But aside from that, he does not notice any other relevant effect. Zichen concludes that this result was expected, because the ghost squid is only a low-level terrifying beast and does not have much value for gene fusion. Even so, he thinks that if he wants better biological attributes, he only needs to save money to buy them in the future, or else become stronger so he can hunt and devour terrifying beasts on his own, such as giant rats. When there is less than a week left before classes resume, his mother and Shen Jinghan's family begin discussing taking a trip together. To better understand aquatic form, the protagonist suggests that everyone go to the beach. At the beach, Jinghan enters the water and complains that it is very cold. Zichen thinks this is normal at first and that after she gets used to it, she will not feel so cold. As he swims, the system begins recording the effects of training in the water, increasing his speed, muscle strength, coordination, aquatic affinity, resistance to water pressure, and swimming ability. Qinghan calls the protagonist and asks him not to swim alone, wanting him to teach her as well. Only then does Zichen remember that Qinghan still has not learned how to swim. Zichen begins teaching Qinghan how to swim calmly, but he believes she probably will not learn easily because she does not have much talent for physical activities. However, the protagonist is surprised to see Qinghan managing to swim on her own in a short time. She celebrates, saying that swimming is very easy. Qinghan decides to dive and is surprised that she can also open her eyes underwater. She tells Zichen that she has always heard people say that it stings a lot, but for her, it causes no discomfort at all and is actually calm and comfortable. Seeing this, the protagonist finds the situation strange, because even if Qinghan's aquatic affinity is impressive, she managed to learn several diving techniques all at once, something he considers far too abnormal. Zichen pauses for a moment after realizing a possibility. Maybe Qinghan always wet the bed precisely because she has a natural affinity with water. With that idea, the protagonist becomes excited and begins imagining that, in a past life, she might even have had some special physique worthy of a xianxia novel. After that, Zichen dives together with Shen Qinghan, and her performance surprises him even more, since the two of them hold their breath for 10 minutes, something difficult even for professionals. While they continue underwater, Qinghan notices something strange and is startled when she hears a voice coming from the depths of the sea. Qinghan is frightened underwater and wonders what that voice was, so she and Zichen quickly return to the surface. Back on the beach, the protagonist notices that she is still tense and asks what happened. Qinghan explains that a moment earlier she heard a strange voice in the water and it sounded frightening. Zichen asks what voice Qinghan heard, and she explains that she could not understand it because it seemed to be an unknown language, but she was sure it was a woman's voice. Qinghan says that the voice sounded very real and that she kept hearing it until they left the water, after which it disappeared. To help her calm down, the protagonist immediately takes Qinghan back to the hotel and tries to search on his phone for anything related to what she heard, but he finds no information. Even so, it leaves Zichen unable to sleep, so he decides to continue training during the night, does 1,000 resistance sit-ups, and ends up increasing his abdominal strength and proficiency in the exercise. With this, the system informs him that his biological level has risen to normal tier 5, leaving the protagonist surprised that he evolved right while training. Upon reaching normal tier 5, Zichen realizes that he is now at a level capable of rivaling adult giant rats. To him, if he continues training at this pace, tearing those creatures apart with his own hands may no longer be impossible. After this evolution, the protagonist goes to a deserted beach to test his new attributes and confirms that he can run 100 meters in 3.64 seconds, as well as achieve a vertical jump of 6.98 meters. Zichen also confirms that he can now lift around 1,600 kilos with one hand, a huge difference compared to when he was at normal tier 4. After this evolution, his student life finally returns to normal and he arrives early at the university with Qinghan, since the two of them need to clean the classroom. But the protagonist did not expect his new classmates to already know him, and some girls become excited when they see him in person, saying that he is even more handsome up close and that they were lucky to clean the classroom on the same day as him. However, to Zichen's surprise, this simple cleaning task ends up activating a new mission. After finishing the classroom cleaning together with Qinghan and the other classmates, a new achievement is activated requiring Zichen to complete 1,000 daily tasks while cooperating with other people. The reward includes 4,000 biological experience points and something called Socializing Monster, making the protagonist wonder what its effect will be and hope it will be something useful. Since classes have just resumed and he still does not have much to do, Zichen takes the opportunity to return to the supermarket, since after completing his assimilation with the ghost squid, it is time to choose a new target. But while looking for something interesting, the protagonist comes across something unexpected and is surprised. Zichen finds tyrant eagle meat being sold for 1,999 yuan per 500 grams. Seeing this, the protagonist realizes that he has found exactly the new target he was looking for his next assimilation. The tyrant eagle is a terrifying beast one level slightly above the ghost squid, and its greatest distinguishing feature is its exceptional vision, 30 times better than that of a normal person. To Zichen, this attribute is extremely useful and could become the ideal next target for his assimilation. Thanks to its exceptional vision, the tyrant eagle has extremely strong hunting abilities, allowing it to accurately capture terrifying beasts that move so fast they appear only as a blur. Zichen concludes that if he can improve his vision, his combat ability will increase greatly, so assimilating this beast is definitely worth it. The most important point is that tyrant eagle meat is also one of the cheapest options, costing only 1,998 yuan for every 500 grams. With this, the protagonist buys the meat and devours a little of the tyrant eagle's life essence, starting his new assimilation with 1% progress. Zichen realizes that every 500 grams of tyrant eagle meat increases the assimilation by only 1%, so he calculates that he will need around 200,000 yuan to complete it. Since the tournaments he will participate in from now on offer much larger prizes, the protagonist decides to focus even more on competitions to gather money, determined to complete this assimilation before reaching his second year. With the end of vacation, Zichen finally returns to his student life at Shanghai School. On the first day of class, the teachers and students begin introducing themselves, and teacher Han Yuanfeng introduces himself as the martial arts instructor, as well as the class's acting homeroom teacher. Then Kai Wanfei introduces himself as the mechanical modification teacher, Liu Darren as the gene fusion teacher, and Chung Bi as the survival teacher. After the teachers introduce themselves, they ask the students to do the same. The first is Chu Yushu, who says she is good at playing the zither, go, calligraphy, and painting. Then Zhong Yijia introduces herself, saying she likes anime, cosplay, and sports, while Peng Huoquang says he usually spends his free time at home playing games. Soon, it is Shen Qinghan's turn to introduce herself, and because so many people are watching her, she becomes very nervous. Even so, Qinghan stands up, says her name, mentions that she likes drawing and hopes she can rely on everyone in the future. Zikin's introduction is probably the shortest in the room, with the protagonist simply saying his name, and that he also hopes to rely on his classmates from then on. Time passes quickly, and after everyone finishes introducing themselves, the bell rings, signaling the end of class. At that moment, a female student approaches Qinghan and asks what her score was on the entrance exam. Qinghan answers that she scored 709 before asking how much Chuxin got. Chuxin is impressed, saying that this is more than 10 points higher than her own score since she got 698. Then she asks about the physical test and comments that she did badly on the entrance exam, scoring only 95 points, as if that were a poor result. Qinghan becomes even more nervous and says that she also did not do very well, but thinks that on a physical test worth 100 points, scoring 95 is already enough to place someone among the top students. Qinghan feels embarrassed because she scored only 79 on the physical test, 21 points below what was needed to enter the honor class, so she cannot say her score out loud. Without noticing her discomfort, Chuxin keeps asking excitedly if her score was 94 or 93. Qinghan only replies that it was lower, but Chuxin keeps guessing high numbers, imagining that maybe it was 92, 91, or 90. Noticing Qinghan's discomfort, Zikin interrupts the conversation and asks for Chuxin's number. She immediately agrees and becomes extremely excited, thinking that a handsome boy took the initiative to ask for her contact information, and wondering if she has been blessed with some kind of divine luck. Meanwhile, Qinghan feels relieved that Zikin helped her, because if Chuxin had kept asking about her score, she would not have known how to answer, and the situation would have become even more uncomfortable. Zikin also asks for Yu's number, and he accepts without any problem and gives him his contact information. After adding him along with Qinghan and Chuxin, the protagonist creates a group with the four of them. Zikin did not expect that creating that group would also count toward the mission's progress, and the system confirms that he has formed a four-person group, increasing the joint events to 2 out of 1,000. With this, the protagonist concludes that this mission will be much easier than he imagined. After creating the group, the four begin getting to know one another better, and Zikin discovers that Yu came from the neighboring city of Nawan, where his family has maintained a martial arts dojo for generations, making him the heir to a martial lineage. Yu also reached 8th place in Nawan's youth martial arts competition, bringing pride to his family. Li Chuxin, on the other hand, comes from a family that owns a clothing store with several branches around the city, so she is truly a rich girl. Zichen and Shen Qinghan also tell the two about their own situations, and in this way, the four end up forming a closer group, starting to talk about all kinds of things. When the conversation starts running out of topics, Yu brings up an interesting question and challenges the group to guess who the strongest person in the class is. Chuxin immediately bets on Zichen, since he was the city's top scorer in the entrance exam, and Yu is completely surprised to discover that the protagonist is that impressive. Yu explains that being the city's top scorer may not be enough, because their class has two tough students whom the director brought from Nawan by paying a fortune. The first is Wang Shuji, sitting in the third row by the window, who was the third highest scorer in Nawan's entrance exam and can run 100 meters in 7.98 seconds. Yu also points to Lu Gang, the large boy sitting in the last row on the right, explaining that he was born with extraordinary strength and can lift 300 kilos with only one hand. Qinghan comments that the two of them seem very strong, while Chuxin is shocked by that information. Zichen is also startled for a moment, but soon thinks that running 100 meters in 7.98 seconds and lifting 300 kilos with one hand were things he could already do back in elementary school. After that, the bell rings again and they begin handing out the class books, but there are only 4, one for each main subject. Since Zichen had already studied all that content when he was younger, he decides to use his free periods to look for a hidden place and continue training. The threat of the rat god cult is still out there since the police have only managed to arrest the heretics so far without finding any trace of the Rat King. Because of this, Zichen knows he needs to become as strong as possible and reach at least normal tier 6 so he can face even giant rats if he ends up encountering those creatures. Later, the first practical class of the afternoon begins, which is the survival class. In the practical survival class, the teacher asks if anyone knows how to start a fire using friction on wood. Yu comments that almost no one would use that in daily life and that it would be strange for someone to learn it for fun. But he is soon surprised when Lu Gong and Wang Shuji quickly produce fire in front of the class. The teacher is impressed to see Lu Gong and Wang Shuji managing to start a fire by friction and asks where they learned it. Lu Gong explains that he took extracurricular classes during vacation, while Wang Shuji says he learned it by himself on the internet back in elementary school. After the Nawan duo finishes showing their skills, the other students also begin trying to do the same, and Zikin takes the opportunity to teach the members of his group a trick that makes it easier to start a fire using friction on wood. In the next class, martial arts, the teacher says he will teach a cultivation method using a special breathing technique. But the class also ends up becoming a stage for the Nawan duo to stand out. Before the explanation can even move forward, one of the students interrupts, saying that they had already learned it before. Even though the scene is a little funny, the Nawan duo really can perform the special breathing technique correctly. Zekin had also learned all of it long ago, but he prefers not to attract attention and lets the class continue normally. Before he realizes it, a month passes, and the teacher tells the class that now that some time has passed since classes resumed, it is time to test everyone's progress. The teacher announces that the test will have cash rewards, with 888 yuan for first place, 666 yuan for second, and 333 yuan for third. Hearing this, Zikin becomes interested, since the first place prize is almost enough to buy 250 grams of tyrant eagle meat. With this reward at stake, all the students begin taking the test more seriously and do their best to answer the questions. More than an hour later, the test finally ends. But right afterward, teacher Liu Darren also decides to test the class's progress with another exam using the same rewards. Yu celebrates in relief that one test is over, while a red-haired student complains that the exam was far too difficult since it even asked about the wavelength of a laser cannon, something he does not understand why he would need to remember. After the test, the students begin complaining about the difficulty of the questions, saying they were too hard, especially the last one, which mixed a counterforce air device, atmospheric pressure, and calculations with several decimal places. A female classmate who had previously hoped to score at least 90 now thinks reaching 60 would already be lucky. While everyone is still complaining, the Nawan duo begins showing off. Wang Shuji comments that the test was only a little difficult and asks how much Lu Gong thinks he scored. He replies that he should be able to get around 95 since he only failed to solve the last question, and Wang Shuji says he also could not finish that part but believes he will get the same score. Yu becomes irritated seeing the Nawan duo showing off again and wonders if they really cannot stop doing that. Growing more and more annoyed, he starts wanting to go over to the two of them and beat them up to put an end to their arrogance. The teacher announces that the mechanical modification test results are out and begins revealing the scores, with Guo Yanling scoring 82 points and Shen Qinghan getting 61. Realizing that she passed, Qinghan celebrates with Zichen, and the protagonist recognizes that her effort has paid off. Soon after, the teacher announces that Yu scored 88 points, impressing the classmates and making everyone praise his performance. Even the teacher says it is a great score and that he has high expectations for him. Yu tries to act humble, saying it was just luck and that the questions happened to cover things he knew, but he soon gets excited and promises to treat everyone to dinner once he receives the 333 yuan prize for third place. The teacher continues announcing the scores and reveals that Lu Gong and Wang Shuji both scored 95 points, praising the two for nearly reaching a perfect score. Wang Shuji comments that the last question only required a lot of calculations and that he would have solved it if he had 10 more minutes, while Lu Gong agrees with him, making the teacher reinforce that he believes in the two of them. Seeing the Nawan duo showing off again, Yu becomes irritated but still believes third place will be his. However, the teacher surprises the class by saying that even though it was a difficult test, someone managed to get a perfect score and announces that Lin Ziken scored 100 points. Wang Shuji and Lu Gong are shocked and cannot understand how that was possible, while Yu recognizes that even Nawan's top students were defeated and becomes impressed by Zichen, but soon laments losing third place. Qinghan celebrates, saying the protagonist is incredible. Chuxin celebrates the glory of Shanghai, and Zichen only cares about when the 888 yuan first place prize will be handed out. The teacher reassures Zichen and says he will send the cash prize through a red envelope in the class group, with exclusive access for him, while thinking that the boy seems far too concerned about money and wondering if he is really that broke. A little more than an hour later, the gene fusion test results also come out. Lu Gong and Wang Shuji, the Nawan duo, score 81 and 83 points respectively, which is already impressive on a test where almost everyone failed. But the two are not satisfied because those scores are not high enough for them to show off like before. Shen Qinghan scores 78 points and enters the top 5, while Zichen gets a perfect score again and secures another cash prize. The result leaves He Yu, Wang Shuji, and Lu Gong completely shocked, and Wang Shuji cannot understand how someone could get a perfect score on such a difficult test. Lu Gong even suspects that Zichen might have known the answers beforehand, but teacher Liu Darren immediately denies it and says that is simply impossible. The teacher explains that he created all the questions himself, so it would be impossible to find the answers online, or for Zichen to have cheated. With this, Wang Shuji and Lu Gong are left speechless, while He Yu takes the opportunity to mock them, saying that if they cannot beat the protagonist, they should simply accept defeat instead of accusing him of cheating, calling it a disgrace to the people of Nawan. Chuxin also shows no mercy and comments that Wang Shuji has no class at all, saying that the uglier a person is, the more trouble they cause. The break passes quickly, and soon the survival class test begins. Teacher Chung Bi announces that the prizes will be the same as in the other subjects, with 888 yuan for first place, 666 yuan for second, and 333 yuan for third. The test will be divided into 3 main challenges: climbing, swimming, and making a fire using only materials found in nature. After losing in the written tests, Wang Shuji tells Lu Gong that they need to recover their honor in the survival and martial arts tests, and Lu Gong agrees, promising to give it his all to defeat Zichen and erase the shame they suffered. The test begins with the climbing challenge, where the students need to climb a mountain and then a tree with their scores determined by speed. Without much surprise, Zichen takes a first place in mountain climbing and makes the Nawan duo eat dust again, leaving Wang Shuji indignant because he is giving it his all and Lu Gong irritated because he cannot even catch Zichen's shadow. Soon after, the protagonist also takes first place in tree climbing, but at that moment, his biggest concern is Qinghan, who has not even finished the first part and ends up in last place. Even so, Zichen believes this is not a big problem because she can recover her confidence in the swimming test. In the next challenge, making fire using natural materials, the protagonist has no choice but to crush the Nawan duo once again to secure the cash prize, and he ends up lighting the fire in only 58 seconds, leaving the students shocked by the absurd speed of his hands. Wang Shuji and Lu Gong are even more shaken because they clearly remember that Zichen was not that fast when they first did this training. Finally, the swimming test arrives, and this time, Shen Qinghan also surpasses the Nawan duo, dealing another blow to their pride since they can at least understand Zichen being fast, but they have no idea how Qinghan became so impressive in the water. After the survival test, Wang Shuji and Lu Gong remained strangely quiet for a while, but that silence does not last long because the martial arts class reignites their hope of showing off again. Teacher Han Yuanfeng announces that, after a month of practice, it is time to test the results of their training through duels, and he also informs them that the top 3 will receive prizes. With this, the Nawan duo thinks that even though Zichen is good at written exams and survival, in martial arts what truly matters is physique and combat technique, so they believe they can finally reclaim first place and erase the shame they went through. Before the duels begin, the teacher has everyone perform a warm-up that will also serve as a test, measuring 3 things: the 100-meter time, the weight each person can lift with one hand, and vertical jump height. During the warm-up, Zichen records 7.78 seconds in the 100 meters, lifts 330 kilos with one hand, and reaches 2.18 meters in the vertical jump, taking first place in all 3 categories. Even so, the protagonist only shows numbers slightly above Wang Shuji's and Lu Gong's to avoid anything too exaggerated. The Nawan duo is shocked to realize that Zichen is faster and stronger than them, but they try to convince themselves that losing in the warm-up does not mean losing in a duel, since a real fight also depends on technique. After that, everyone goes to the duel area in the gymnasium, and Zichen steps into the ring first to advance the survival achievement more quickly. However, because of his results in the warm-up, no one dares to face him, not even the Nawan duo, who decide to observe for now. Realizing that this might annoy the teacher, Zichen simply waits until Han Yuanfeng orders Lu Wei to step up and duel him. To save time and defeat everyone in the class as quickly as possible, Zichen decides to speed things up and end each fight with a single blow. As soon as the duel begins, the protagonist knocks Lu Wei down instantly, frightening his classmates with the difference in strength. Wang Shuji cannot believe that Zichen is strong to that level, while Lu Gong suspects that he was not even taking the warm-up seriously and wonders how anyone could compete against him. At that moment, He Yu steps into the ring and calls out Lu Gong directly, saying that he is already warmed up, is in his best physical condition, and challenges the big guy to face him, guaranteeing that he only needs 30 seconds to finish him. Lu Gong thinks that if He Yu had not taken the initiative to challenge him, he probably would have had to face Lin Zixin. Even though he has no confidence in beating Lin Zixin, that does not mean he is also afraid of He Yu. He Yu tells him to come, attacking with several fast kicks. But Lu Gong simply blocks the attacks with ease, grabs He Yu's leg, and throws him out of the arena, ending the fight. After taking He Yu down, Lu Gong acknowledges that among all the opponents he has faced, He Yu's hand-to-hand combat was the best, even saying that in terms of technique, He Yu is probably the strongest in the class. Even so, he states that his own skills are still one level above his. Taking advantage of the moment, Zixin steps into the ring and asks if Lu Gong wants to try fighting him now, thinking this may be a great chance to gain more progress, before no one else has the courage to step up. Lu Gong accepts the challenge without backing down, saying he is not afraid of him, and immediately attacks with everything he has. But the instant he tries to hit the protagonist, he is frightened to realize that Zixin is far too fast, and before he can react properly, the protagonist strikes him hard and sends him flying. Seeing Lu Gong being completely pressured, the students start provoking Wang Shuji, saying that his brother is being crushed and asking if he is not going to step up to avenge him. Others also insist that he needs to protect the glory of Nawan's top students instead of making excuses. Irritated by the pressure, Wang Shuji tells everyone to shut up and says he was already about to go up. Meanwhile, Wang Shuji faces the situation with determination, knowing that there is no turning back now and that he needs to find a way to defeat Zixin. Wang Shuji advances, thinking he needs to give it everything he has, but Zixin handles the attack without difficulty and quickly knocks him down. After that, the protagonist continues facing the other boys in the class one by one, defeating each of them in sequence until it becomes clear that none of them can keep up with him in the ring. Zixin continues knocking down the last boys in the class without difficulty, but soon realizes through the rules of the survival of the fittest mission that he cannot defeat the same opponent multiple times. With this, he concludes that he can only fight the girls now, but he wonders whether they would agree to face him. Before he can even finish that thought, several of them show interest, and a purple-haired girl raises her hand excitedly, calling out to Zixin and saying that she wants to challenge him. The purple-haired girl tries to attack Zixin, but he moves far too quickly, making her complain about his speed while thinking in disappointment that she almost managed to hug him. After that, to the protagonist's surprise, the other girls also take the initiative and fight him. Zixin decides to control himself during these matches, since his main goal is to complete the mission as quickly as possible, not hurt anyone. Not long afterward, he has already faced all the girls, but he is still far from completing the mission, leaving him a little disappointed with the result. That is when Han Yuanfeng brings great news, praising the class's performance and explaining that, as an elite class, they need to learn how to challenge people above their own level. For that reason, 1 month from now, their class will face the strongest class of the second year with the goal of defeating every student in that class. Hearing this, Zixin realizes that his worry about not being able to complete the mission anytime soon may finally have a solution. Zixin treats the news of the match against the second year as a true gift from heaven, since it can directly help advance the mission. After class, some classmates are still thinking about their defeat, and one of them admits that he was worried he would not find any rivals at school, but now realizes he had underestimated the place, starting to regard Zixin as a major opponent for the next 3 years. Wang Shuji also makes it clear that losing now does not mean he will keep losing in the future, promising to get revenge before graduation. While they speak seriously, the protagonist practically ignores their provocations and is excited as he calculates that he earned around 3,000 yuan in a single day, thinking that he can use the money to buy more beast meat. Seeing Zixin smiling to himself, Wang Shuji and Lu Gong think he is mocking them and become even more irritated by his supposed arrogance. Even so, Zixin knows that this amount is still too little to buy enough meat and reach 100% assimilation. So, to earn more money, he decides to open an account as a novel writer and begin his own career writing online stories. After beginning to write novels online, Zixin receives a message from an editor at the Yuanwen platform, saying that his work is very good and offering him a contract to begin serialization. When he wakes up, the protagonist realizes that he has already received an official proposal from the website, and after signing the contract, a piece of news catches his attention. 2 hours earlier, a giant rat had attacked a beast meat warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The creature was 5 meters tall and, with a single bite, managed to tear a cyborg in half. With no other choice, the cyborg immediately activated his auxiliary energy and self-destructed to eliminate the enemy. The explosion kills the giant rat instantly, but the news leaves Zixin uneasy, making him wonder how many of those monsters may still be hidden around the city, and where such enormous creatures could possibly conceal themselves. On the day of the match against the second-year ordinary class, the students gather in the school gymnasium, and Han Yuanfeng explains the tactics to the elite class. He explains that in individual combat, the opponent's best fighters do not surpass theirs, but the other classes' combined strength is greater, so they will probably use their numerical advantage to turn the match into a battle of attrition, taking turns to wear them down. Because of this, the elite class needs to win quickly. Everyone confirms that they understand, and Zikin immediately offers to go first, since he needs to complete the mission as soon as possible, and the earlier he starts fighting, the better. The blonde girl from the opposing class becomes apprehensive when she sees Zikin wanting to enter the very first fight, saying that he is the strongest fighter in the elite class while she is the weakest in her own class, so there is no way she can face him. The opposing teacher also complains to Han Yuanfeng, saying that according to the tactical rules of duels, the weakest should go first, and sending the strongest student right away breaks that logic. Because of this, Han Yuanfeng calls Zichen back and tells the protagonist to wait his turn, letting the weaker students fight first. Zichen accepts the order without insisting, and the teacher chooses Yuntong to begin. Caught off guard, she questions the decision, saying that she is not even ready yet. Qinghan offers to go first, telling teacher Han that since she is the weakest, she should start the fight. Even though she tries to take the initiative, she enters the ring nervously, not really knowing what to do. Her classmates begin cheering for hers, saying she can win and telling her to finish off her opponent. But the pressure only makes Qinghan panic even more. As soon as the fight begins, she's put under pressure by the opponent's attacks, but she tries to resist even though she knows she may not be able to win. To Qinghan, the best thing she can do at that moment is hold out as long as possible and tire out the opponent to help the class. 3 minutes later, Qinghan continues resisting while focusing only on defense, and her opponent realizes that if things continue like this, she will soon run out of energy. Determined to end the fight at once, she goes for a stronger strike and finally knocks Qinghan down. Even though she loses, Qinghan fulfills her role well by holding out as long as possible and wearing down the opponent. But she still feels ashamed and runs over to Zichen. Han Yuanfeng praises her strategy, saying she was clever to focus on defense and exhaust the enemy. The protagonist also points out that lasting 3 minutes against someone with 1 more year of training is already great progress, and Qinghan accepts the recognition with a simple nod. Seeing that the opponent already has little energy left after facing Qinghan, another female student decides to take advantage of the chance to finish her off quickly. She charges forward, trying to land a powerful blow, but the opponent manages to dodge and counterattack, pinning the girl down. Unable to escape, the student soon shouts to be released and ends up giving up the fight. The blonde knocks down the girl who tried to attack her without defending herself and mocks her, saying that charging in like that was practically underestimating the ordinary class. She admits that she may not have as much talent as the newcomers from the elite class, but reminds them that she has trained for much longer and tells the girl to come back after training for another year. Seeing this, Chuxin enters the ring, determined to avenge Qinghan, and promises to finish off that senior. Chuxin enters the fight with everything she has and manages to defeat the senior, leaving Qinghan impressed by her strength. Seeing her excitement, Zikin remembers that Qinghan was also amazing, because if she had not exhausted the opponent first, Chuxin would not have won so easily. Qinghan accepts the praise happily, and the match continues for another 2 hours. After that time, the opposing class's teacher comments to Han Yuanfeng that his class has only 4 people left, implying that he is about to win the lunch the two of them had bet on. Han Yuanfeng does not get carried away by the advantage and warns him that it is better not to celebrate victory too early. To him, the true strength of the elite class still lies in the 4 students who remain: Zichen, Wang Shuji, Lu Gong, and He Yu. In other words, the real battle is only just beginning. Then Han Yuanfeng calls He Yu to be next, and he accepts excitedly, entering the ring while saying that his fists have been itching for a good fight. Facing his opponent, He Yu even provokes the senior, asking if he is ready to face his stone fists, but the senior becomes embarrassed and tells him to stop making a fool of himself. He Yu starts the fight by hitting the opponent before he can react properly, making the senior fall out of the ring. He Yu mocks the opponent, asking if that was all he had and questioning how someone at that level could call him embarrassing since he is nothing but trash. Irritated by He Yu's arrogance, another opponent enters the ring. The opponent tries to intimidate He Yu by saying he will show him just how weak he is, but he is soon surprised to see He Yu dodge the attack with great speed. Before the senior can react, He Yu counterattacks and lands a direct hit, making the elite class cheer and encourage him to finish off the opponents. After that, He Yu keeps up the pace and begins defeating several opponents in a row, advancing through the match with fast and powerful strikes. Even after defeating several opponents, He Yu still wants to continue and provokes the enemy class, asking who will be next and saying he can still take down 10 more. However, after winning against 5 people in a row, he is clearly exhausted and ends up being defeated by the 6th opponent. With this, the elite class is left with only 3 representatives, while the opposing class still has 13 students remaining. Han Yuanfeng then calls Wang Shuji for the next fight, and he accepts without hesitation. As soon as he enters the match, Wang Shuji shows his strength and defeats 10 opponents in one go, completely changing the pace of the contest. Wang Shuji manages to defeat 10 opponents, but ends up losing in the 11th fight because of accumulated exhaustion. After him, Lu Gong goes into action and shows his strength by defeating 2 of the opposing class's best fighters in less than 10 minutes. With only 1 student left on the other side, Han Yuanfeng asks whether the opposing teacher wants to give up, but he refuses and calls Wang Jinhe for his turn to shine. Seeing the size of the new opponent, Lu Gong does not take the threat very seriously and thinks he is just a little taller and quite fat. Lu Gong advances confidently, thinking he can finish Wang Jinhe off, but when he hits him, he realizes the blow barely has any effect, as if he had struck rubber. Wang Jinhe simply tells him to try again, and Lu Gong keeps attacking, but soon understands that it is useless. The opponent's skin is far too thick, and his blows cannot truly injure him. After enduring everything without being shaken, Wang Jinhe asks if Lu Gong is finished and warns that now it is his turn to attack. Wang Jinhe grabs Lu Gong with ease, and Lu Gong realizes that he can barely breathe properly in the face of that giant's terrifying strength. With a heavy blow, Wang Jinhe knocks Lu Gong down, leaving Han Yuanfeng surprised to discover that the opposing class had such a strong student. The other class's teacher explains that Wang Jinhe transferred that semester, which is why Han did not remember him, and he already begins celebrating the advantage, reminding him of the bet in which the loser would have to pay for lunch for the entire winning class. Han Yuanfeng understands that the opponent had been keeping Wang Jinhe as a hidden trump card, and even though he trusts Zichin, he believes that perhaps not even the protagonist can defeat that monster. Realizing that he was careless and fell into the other teacher's trap, he calls Zichin to fight, but only asks him to do his best and gain experience without worrying too much about victory or defeat. Zichin reassures Han Yuanfeng and says he will win. On the other side, Wang Jinhe looks at him with contempt, saying that the elite class's last fighter looks far too thin, and that he does not like playing with weak people. The elite class's supporters immediately react, provoking Wang Jinhe and saying that Zichin will finish him off. To prevent them from complaining afterward, Wang Jinhe decides to stand still and let the protagonist make the first 10 moves, saying that this way no one will be able to accuse him of winning unfairly. Zichin simply accepts with a smile on his face. Wang Jinhe keeps provoking him and tells Zichin to come at him with everything he has, promising to stand still and take the blow at full force. The protagonist attacks without hesitation, striking Wang Jinhe with a violent blow. The force of the attack is so absurd that the entire crowd falls silent, unable to react to what just happened. After Zichin's blow, Wang Jinhe collapses completely, and the elite class's supporters explode in celebration, shouting that the protagonist has won. While everyone celebrates, Wang Jinhe regains consciousness without understanding anything, asking where he is and what happened. Confused by his own defeat, he tries to process the situation, but can only think that none of it makes any sense. After Zichin's victory, the opposing class's teacher acknowledges his strength and tells Han Yuanfeng that the protagonist is incredible, since he managed to defeat Wang Jinhe with only 1 punch. He even compares Zichin to Wu Tiancheng when he was still a first-year student. But Han Yuanfeng says that comparison is exaggerated, because Wu Tiancheng was a true monster and almost frightened even the director with his level of strength. Curious, Zichin asks who Wu Tiancheng was, and Han explains that he was a senior who graduated a few years earlier. Someone who, while still in his first year, completely destroyed the third-year elite class and left many of the school leaders terrified. In addition, at that time, Wu Tiancheng could run 100 meters in only 6.12 seconds, jump 3.46 meters vertically, and lift 650 kilos with one hand. After revealing those absurd numbers, Han asks if Zichin is impressed. Zichin replies that he is a little impressed, but in truth, he thinks that Wu Tiancheng really was strong, almost reaching the level Zichin himself had during the vacation of 6th grade. After the victory against the second-year ordinary class, the class celebrates at a restaurant, since the opposing teacher lost the bet and had to pay for everyone's food. The classmates raise a toast to thank Zichin, calling him incredible, and treating the protagonist as the main reason for their victory. Because of this, Zichin becomes famous at school and several students begin approaching him, asking how he trains at home, whether he has any secrets, and even asking for his number, something he is still not used to. Meanwhile, Qinghan continues acting as usual, worried that he will become too busy talking to his classmates and end up not eating, so she quietly places food on his plate. Qinghan tells Zichin that she is going to the bathroom, and the one thing that truly has not changed about her is that uncontrollable need to pee. However, on the way, she ends up overhearing some female students speaking badly about her behind her back. They comment that Shen Qinghan serves drinks to Lin Zikin and even peels shrimp for him, calling her a suck-up and saying she looks like a servant serving her own master. They also imply that with her strength, Qinghan would never have entered the elite class if not for Zichen, and they bet that this relationship will not last long, since the difference in strength between the two will only cause them to separate in the future. Hearing this, Qinghan is shaken, but she does not accept the humiliation and replies that she is no one's servant, making it clear that she is Zichen's childhood friend. Zichen notices that Qinghan returns looking somewhat down and asks if something happened. She then opens up remembering that when she was little her mother always said everything would get better when she grew up, and that one day she would stop wetting her clothes. However, even now Qinghan still wets the bed at night and has to wear a diaper to sleep, which leaves her deeply frustrated. Shaken by what she heard from her classmates, she begins to think that maybe there is something wrong with her, believing that a normal person would be able to hold it in. Zichen, however, immediately denies this and tries to comfort her, saying that this inability is not a weakness, but rather a kind of superpower that she has not yet fully developed. Qinghan is surprised by the idea of having a superpower, and Zichen confirms it, explaining that her incredible talent for swimming is already a manifestation of that power. Hearing this, Qinghan remembers that Zichen has always been amazing since they were little and asks if he also has a superpower. The protagonist admits that he does, saying that he has a power just like she does. With this, Qinghan begins imagining what her own superpower would be like if it really exists, and Zichen assures her that it must definitely be something very powerful. As Zichen and Qinghan walk down the street, they end up seeing a rat extermination operation taking place nearby. The authority at the scene tells a man to put down the broom and explains that they are eliminating the rats for public safety, asking him to cooperate with their work. However, the man becomes completely out of control, shouting for them to stop and not kill his brothers. The situation worsens when he threatens to kill everyone if they continue exterminating the rats. Seeing that scene, Qinghan asks Zichen if the man is crazy, and the protagonist replies that he probably escaped from some mental hospital. Qinghan is frightened by the out-of-control man, and Zichen explains that people with mental problems can act like that, so he decides to take her home. Later, at Zichen's house, the news reports the disappearance of a young female teacher who left work and was never found again. Wan Shen comments worriedly that another young woman has disappeared and thinks this is already the fourth one that month, but Yan Shen corrects her, saying this is already the fifth. The report explains that all the missing women were young and beautiful, so it recommends that they avoid going out at night, or at least walk with someone, and stay away from dark places. Worried about Qinghan's safety, Wanshin asks Zichen not to let her go out alone, and the protagonist reassures his mother, saying he will take care of her. Meanwhile, at the Public Security Bureau in a district of Shanghai, the man who caused trouble at the market is taken in for evaluation. An officer asks the doctor whether the examination revealed any problem, but he says they are still not sure, because he tried to communicate with the man several times, and he did not answer a single word, acting as if he were mute. The officer immediately finds this strange, since at the market he had been shouting non-stop the night before. When the two go to check on the situation, they are surprised by the man's condition inside the room. Suddenly, the man begins transforming in front of everyone inside the interrogation room, and the situation completely spirals out of control. Seeing this, the officer panics and orders them to call reinforcements immediately, also requesting support from the cyborgs, because the detained person is turning into a rat man. The police try to contain the rat man with a series of shots, but the creature keeps advancing even under heavy fire. Amid the chaos, a female officer tells the captain that all the cyborgs are on missions and that reinforcements will only arrive in 10 minutes, while their ammunition is already running out. Realizing they will not be able to hold the monster back for long, the captain orders everyone to get into the car quickly and decides to lure the giant rat out of the city, trying to buy time until reinforcements arrive. The rat man continues chasing the patrol car at high speed, destroying everything in its path while the police try to keep their distance. The captain orders the driver to speed up even more and lure the creature toward the mountains, using that as a way to buy time until reinforcements arrive. Even so, the monster keeps charging non-stop, attacking violently as the patrol car flees along the road. The patrol car ends up being hit, and the officers realize that, in the end, they failed to buy enough time. The rat man approaches with a roar, ready to attack, but at that instant, the reinforcements finally arrive. A woman locates the target, aims at the creature, and begins the elimination order, firing a sequence of explosive attacks directly at the monster. Even after the series of attacks, the giant rat manages to dig a hole and escape, leaving the woman surprised by how intelligent these creatures seem to be becoming. Judging by the amount of flesh scattered on the ground, she concludes that the monster is seriously injured and probably has not gone far, so there is still a chance to find it quickly and eliminate the threat. At 3 in the morning, Zicken is still awake, thinking that 15 days have already passed since he became a writer. Maintaining a routine of 4,000 characters a day, he is already close to 100,000 characters and his earnings have exceeded 10,000 yuan. In addition, there are still recommendation slots for the new batch of books, and if he manages to enter them, the protagonist will be able to earn even more when the work begins selling in the first month. After checking the novel's performance, Zicken becomes so excited that he cannot sleep, so he goes to a nearby alley to test the results of his training. There, he confirms an absurd improvement. He can run 100 meters in 3.43 seconds and reach a vertical jump of 7.22 meters. While testing the results of his training in the alley, Zicken realizes that his evolution is becoming increasingly absurd and thinks that if he keeps improving at this pace, he may even be able to attain an immortal body. At that moment, the protagonist hears strange sounds nearby and goes to check, finding the giant rat man crying while devouring someone. The creature apologizes to its own brother, saying it did not want to eat him, but was far too hungry, and promises to visit his grave every year after it is satisfied. Seeing that scene, Zicken understands that this must be the rat man who escaped in the news earlier and realizes the danger of the situation, deciding to leave immediately to call the police. The rat man notices Zicken trying to move away and still consumed by hunger, immediately changes its focus. It tells its brother that it no longer needs to eat him because it can devour other people and begins running after the protagonist. Zicken understands that he has been discovered and that he no longer has time to call for help, so he needs to escape that alley before the creature catches him. The Ratman races after Zicken at terrifying speed, leaping from side to side through the alley while shouting that it wants human flesh. The protagonist tries to keep up with the creature's movements, but soon realizes that it is too fast and that, at this distance, he will not be able to dodge the attack. Unable to escape, Zicken realizes that he will have to face the Ratman head-on. The creature advances, trying to hit him with its claws, but the protagonist reacts by kicking the Ratman in the face and sending it flying. The Ratman is frightened when it realizes that Zicken is not an ordinary human and recognizes that he is far too strong. Without giving the monster a chance to react, the protagonist charges forward and strikes it hard, making it clear that it made a mistake by underestimating him. To Zicken, that filthy rat had no idea who it was messing with. Zicken advances against the creature and begins hitting it with a sequence of stones, giving it no room to react. The protagonist stands still before the remains scattered across the ground, thinking that the enemy has finally stopped moving. Zicken approaches the creature's remains and wonders whether it really died. When he touches the body, the protagonist realizes that he can devour its life energy, but finds it strange that the absorption is only 2%, since that seems far too little. Right after that, the system informs him that he has devoured a little of the life energy of a giant rat, increasing the assimilation to 7%. Zicken remembers that last time it had been 5% and begins wondering if this is connected to the amount of genes the heretic consumed. Seeing that dawn is already approaching, Zicken decides to go back, thinking that he cannot stay there for too long. Shortly afterward, a woman in armor lands on the Ratman's remains and questions who killed that creature. Meanwhile, a hooded man takes an unconscious woman to a ritual circle and places her in the center, asking the Great Rat King to accept that offering. The Great Rat King appears in the ritual and complains that they only brought one woman, saying that it is nowhere near enough to satisfy him. Then he threatens the hooded man, asking if he also came as a sacrifice this time. The man panics and tries to explain, saying that young women have been very alert lately, no longer going out at night and always walking with others during the day, making them difficult to capture. The Rat King orders the hooded man to bring young men as sacrifices next time. The servant prostrates himself and accepts the order, calling him the Great Rat King. Then he receives a piece of meat as a reward and thanks him for the gift. The Rat King uses an enormous tongue to bind the unconscious woman and lifts her from the ritual circle. Then he pulls her toward his own mouth to devour her. While devouring the woman, the Rat King warns that next time he does not want ordinary people since they suffer too much and end up tasting bad. He says he prefers eating the great and powerful, people accustomed to comfortable lives because their flesh is softer and more delicious. Meanwhile, to help Shen Qinghan raise her martial arts score as quickly as possible, Zicken begins giving her special training at her house whenever he has time. During the training, Zicken instructs Qinghan, saying that her fist is rising too high and that if she lowers it a little, it'll be easier to increase the power of the strike. She accepts the correction, and the protagonist continues adjusting her posture, explaining that her legs are too close together and that she needs to widen her stance a bit. Afterward, he corrects her body, telling her not to face the opponent directly and to move more. When Qinghan manages to adjust her posture, Zicken approves and decides to test her progress, asking her to attack with everything she has. Chinghan charges at Zichen and tries to hit him with a punch, but he catches the blow and praises her progress, saying the angle is perfect and that the attack has become much stronger than before. Then she tries a kick, and the protagonist corrects her form, explaining that she should not keep her legs together before kicking and needs to widen her stance a little more. After that, Zichen asks her to repeat the movement while correcting that point, and Chinghan agrees before continuing to attack. After continuing the training, Chinghan becomes exhausted, but feels that her martial arts have improved a lot. She asks Zichen if training 3 times a week is not too little and suggests doing the special training every day. The protagonist refuses, saying that 3 days a week is already a lot and that she would not be able to handle training like that daily. Chinghan understands and accepts keeping that pace, but soon the protagonist notices urgent news on his phone. The Mechanicus group announces on its official website that it will provide free treatment to the former surgical genius who became disabled after undergoing genetic modifications too early, while another news report states that the genius of Jing University has fused with the genes of the Thousand Web Spider, breaking the university's record as the youngest person to undergo a second genetic fusion. Seeing this, Zichen wonders if this genius from Jing University is the same genius from Keto. Normally, most people only undergo gene fusion after becoming adults, because if they do it too young, their bodies cannot withstand the genes of terrifying beasts and they become more prone to mutation. Even so, the genius of Keto, now known as the genius of Jing University, has already undergone a second fusion before the age of 18. To Zichen, physical aptitude at that level is truly incredible, and he begins questioning whether gene fusion might be the best choice. At Lin Zichen's house, after a month of practicing typing, he realizes that with the combined effects of the heavenly root of wisdom and infinite evolution, he can already easily type 10,000 words per hour. To Zichen, spending only 1 hour a day writing will not interfere with his training, so that amount of time is acceptable. The protagonist's father comments that his book is doing very well and explains that if he maintains a consistent output of 10,000 words a day without derailing the story, he could earn around 50,000 in royalties in the very first month. Later, once he has more chapters published, reaching 100,000 a month will not be difficult. Hearing this, Zichen realizes that with that income, he will not need to worry so much about money to unlock beast assimilations, and decides to try saving enough royalties in the first 2 months to unlock the assimilation with the Tyrant Eagle. During martial arts class, Han Yuanfeng organizes a few duels to evaluate the student's progress. As expected, Zichen defeats everyone with ease, leaving his opponents with no strength to fight back. In addition to the 888 yuan, the protagonist also gains a lot of progress in the survival of the fittest achievement. On the other hand, Shen Qinghan still cannot defeat anyone and ends up last in the class ranking, but this time she shows clear improvement. Before, against Wen Yunting, the second to last ranked students, she had been kicked out of the ring in less than 3 seconds. Now, Qinghan manages to hold on for 3 minutes, not only defending herself but also exchanging blows and landing several punches and kicks. Seeing this, Han Yuanfeng repeatedly praises her great progress and tells her to keep it up. Han Yuanfeng announces to the students that 1 month from now, they will challenge the strongest elite class of the second year with the goal of defeating everyone except the top 3 students there. When he asks if everyone has confidence, the class answers yes, and he approves of their determination. More than a month passes since Zichen's novel was published, and the protagonist goes to buy Tyrant Eagle meat. The saleswoman explains that if he buys 5 kilos at once, he gets a 5% discount. So Zichen decides not to buy anything for now and to wait 1 more month until he has enough money to take advantage of the promotion. The next day at school, Qinghan mentions that the cafeteria has opened a new fried food area and says she heard the food there smells very good, so she invites Zichen to try it. When they arrive, Qinghan smells the food and agrees that it seems great, feeling relieved that they came early since the line would soon become huge. However, one student starts arguing with another for cutting in line, and the boy tries to justify it by saying a friend saved a spot for him. Yu, irritated, replies that this still affects the people behind his friend, so it is still cutting in line. The student challenges Yu, but Qinghan notices the argument and asks if Zichen wants to go see. The protagonist thinks it will not be necessary because Yu is intimidating enough, and the boy who cut in line seems to have already backed down, even though he leaves while grumbling. Soon after, other students arrive and start cutting in line in front of Yu. He becomes irritated and asks what they are doing, but the group shamelessly admits that they just want to skip ahead. When Yu tells everyone to go back to the end of the line, he realizes that they might be about to beat him up. Qinghan notices that he is surrounded, and Zichen approaches to intervene, politely asking the student to return to the back of the line. The boy asks what he will do if he refuses, so the protagonist takes out his phone and says he will report him. The student complains that this is playing dirty, but Zikin replies that cutting in line is even more despicable, making the group back down and leave while grumbling. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, inside a house in the rich district, a hooded member reports that Xia Qiang is dead. He explains that Xia Qiang went mad some time ago, ran to the market, provoked the public security team, and ended up being killed. To them, that was a good end for a useless person who kept causing trouble, and who, sooner or later, might have dragged them all down with him. Then, the member introduces a young man who will take Xia Qiang's position by order of the Rat King and asks everyone to get along with him. In addition, he warns that the Rat King no longer wants ordinary people as sacrifices because they are too miserable and taste bad. From now on, he wants to devour the great and powerful of the elite, so everyone must make sure no one continues offering the wrong sacrifices. Some members of the cult become worried, saying that capturing people from the elite is far too risky, since the disappearance of one or two ordinary people does not cause much trouble, but the disappearance of someone important could draw a lot of attention. The cult leader tells them to look for children from rich families but without power in order to reduce the risk. As for the new member, since he is still inexperienced, he does not need to kidnap someone from the elite and should start practicing with handsome middle-class men who will be offered to the divine children of the Rat King. The newcomer accepts the order and promises to deliver the most handsome man in the city as a sacrifice. After observing those students for a few days, Yu discovers that the guys who cut in line are from Class 3 of the second year, precisely the strongest elite class they will soon face. He is indignant that elite students are so poorly behaved, but Zishin simply comments that getting good grades does not mean being a good person. While looking at the news on his phone, the protagonist notices that another young man from a wealthy family has disappeared, making it the fifth case already, and finds it strange because the motive is clearly not money, since the kidnappers have not contacted anyone to demand ransom. With this, Zikin begins to suspect that these disappearances may be connected to the Rat King's cult. The day then arrives for Class 1 of the first year to challenge Class 3, the strongest elite class of the second year. The same students who cut in line stare at Zikin's group, and Yu immediately responds with the same gesture. After the warm-up, the duels are about to begin, and just like last time, Shun Qinghan is the first to fight. Qinghan begins the duel but is quickly overwhelmed by the senior from the elite class and realizes that she is far too strong, to the point that even a defensive style cannot hold her back. This does not happen only to Qinghan. Li Chuxin and the others are also defeated without being able to properly react. Only when a short-haired student, who is a little stronger, steps into the ring does the senior finally lose. However, the next girl sent by the elite class quickly regains control of the match and in less than 2 minutes, defeats 9 people in a row, including 3 boys. In a short time, only Zichen, Wang Shuji, Lu Gong, and Yu remain in the contest for Class 1 of the first year. Meanwhile, Class 3 of the second year has lost only 5 people and still has 36 students ready to fight. And all those defeated so far were girls, without any of their boys having entered the ring. Han Yuanfeng realizes that the difference in strength between the classes is far too great and considers the match almost hopeless. But he calls Yu to fight and asks him to defeat the remaining 6 girls. Yu accepts confidently, thinking that 6 opponents is actually too few and that he would like to face even more beautiful girls. As expected, he defeats all of them with ease, but right afterward, a boy from Class 3 steps into the ring and provokes Yu. Irritated, Yu replies that he is not only rude, but also seems not to understand danger, and thinks that since he is the first boy from his class to fight, he must be one of the weakest. Seeing this as a chance for revenge, the boy charges forward without hesitation. Yu is surprised by the opponent's speed and ends up being knocked down with ease. The student from Class 3 steps on him and tells him to give up, but Yu tries to fight back and realizes that this guy is not one of the weak ones, concluding that he probably stepped into the ring only to get revenge for the incident in the line. Then the student provokes Zichen, saying that he keeps meddling in other people's business, and challenges him to come up if he has the courage. The protagonist, who was worried that he might not get a chance to fight, sees this as the perfect opportunity and enters the ring. The students from Class 1 begin cheering for him to finish off the opponent and make the boy go through the same humiliation he put Yu through. The boy from Class 3 then charges straight at the protagonist and begins pressuring him with a sequence of attacks. However, Zikin blocks everything with ease and knocks Yue down with one hand, ending the fight before the opponent can react. The students from Class 3 are shocked since Yue was among the 5 strongest in the class, and they begin wondering how a freshman can be so powerful. Han Yuanfeng realizes that the protagonist must still be hiding a large part of his strength, because otherwise he would not have won like that. The surprise grows when the other students understand that this was not even everything Zikken could do, and some even wonder whether it has something to do with the juice. Without wasting time, Zikken asks who will be next, and 30 minutes later, all 29 remaining students from Class 3 of the second year have already been defeated. After checking the survival of the fittest mission, the protagonist sees that he has defeated 119 out of 1,000 opponents and thinks the progress is far too slow. Since he always ends up being the last one to fight in these duels, he decides that he cannot keep following this pace. Zikken concludes that his strength is already far beyond that school and that he no longer needs to be bound by other people's rules. So he decides that from then on, he will create his own rules. On Monday, Zikken looks for the teacher and makes an unexpected request. He wants her to organize a tournament with prizes so the students can face him. She's surprised by the idea, and the protagonist confirms that he wants to challenge the entire school. The director questions Zikken because he is still in his first year and already wants to challenge the whole student body, asking what gives him the right to do that. The protagonist confirms that he is serious and asks her to accompany him to the gymnasium, promising to prove that he has enough strength to issue this challenge. Later, in the gymnasium, the director finds it strange that he brought her there so late, and Zikken replies that he is going to show her his strength. Before she can stop him, the protagonist lifts a 700-kilogram weight, leaving the director surprised. She realizes that this is even more absurd than the strength of Wu Tiancheng, the strongest student in the university's history when he was in his first year. With this, she agrees to organize an event for Zikken to challenge the entire school, and he reminds her that she needs to prepare rewards, because without prizes, no one will want to participate. Zikken suggests creating two types of rewards, one simply for participation, to encourage students to go on stage, and another cumulative one, where the more people challenge him, the bigger the final prize becomes. Whoever manages to defeat him takes all the money, but if no one wins within the time limit, the amount goes to him. The director agrees to do everything as he requested, and the protagonist also reminds her that she needs to keep his strength secret for now, because if everyone discovers his real level, they will lose the motivation to participate. After organizing the event strategy, Zikken approves the plan and thanks the director for her work, leaving the teachers shocked to see that director, who normally walks around the university with a stern face, treating Lin Zikken with such consideration. At 2 in the afternoon, as planned, the director presents basic information about him, his recent achievements, the rules of the challenge, the cash prize, and all the details. Just as Zikken expected, the audience immediately becomes restless, with several students questioning whether this is serious, calling the idea insane, and saying that he is only an arrogant freshman for wanting to challenge the entire university just because he defeated the second-year elite class. Some even mock him, asking if he thinks he is Wu Tiancheng, the strongest student in the university's history. Unshaken, the protagonist announces that starting the next day, he will defend the gymnasium stage for 2 hours every day during lunch break, and everyone is welcome to challenge him. Seeing the crowd's reaction, Zikken is satisfied, thinking that many people will want to face him and that he may be able to complete the survival of the fittest mission before the deadline. At night, in Shanghai, some women try to flirt with the blonde man, but he coldly rejects all of them. To him, the city is disappointing because he has spent days looking for the perfect man for the sacrifice and still has not found anyone worthy. The blonde man starts worrying about what the cult leader will think if he fails the mission and fears being looked down on by the other members. He even considers kidnapping a male celebrity, but he knows those targets are surrounded by bodyguards, and as a new recruit of the Rat King's cult, he still does not have the strength to do that. With the deadline almost over, he does not know what to do, until he spots Zikken running down the street and immediately becomes excited, realizing that he has finally found someone handsome enough for the mission. The blonde man decides that Zikken will be the perfect target. Seeing that he has entered a remote area with no one around, the cultist becomes excited and thinks it is time to act. Then he reveals his monstrous form to attack, but ends up being struck hard before he can capture the protagonist. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.